Hi, hello. Welcome back to my witch obsession. In today's video, we'll be discussing Saturn and Aries for all 12 signs. As per usual, timestamps will be in the description box below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you at your reading. I want to say in this video, I'll be going off of a few different things, mainly 3 points. One will be my personal observations, what I've seen with everyone, and 2, Saturn and Neptune being together, and also the Mars retrograde that will happen in the beginning of next year in January. Mars will be in shadow later this fall around that point, and Saturn will be in Aries from February 14th, 2026 until like the spring of 2028. So that's kind of the precursor that I wanted to give in this video. So I'll see you at your reading. I love you. See you there. Okay, so first we have Sagittarius rising. So hello, Sagittarius, fellow Sagittarius risings. So Saturn in Aries for you is going to be moving through your 5th house. And I honestly think that Sag risings are going to have one of the best Saturn and Aries experiences. Not that it'll be amazing or anything like that, but it will definitely be a lot easier than Saturn in your 4th house. And Saturn in the 5th house might kind of add a buzzkill to your life. You might realize that you're having to pivot when it comes to how you enjoy yourself, your self-expression. And with Saturn being tangled up with Neptune in your 5th house, there might be a sense of confusion when it comes to these areas. On one hand, it might make you very, very creative, you know, and Saturn governs your 2nd house of resources and money and self-confidence. So, sorry, I'm gonna like push you back a little bit. I feel like you're a little bit in my face right now. So because of that, I think that Saturn in Aries is going to bring you money when it comes to creativity, fun, enjoyment, and even working with kids. So a lot of you might literally have children. A lot of you might end up getting pregnant under this. A lot of you might, because Sagittarius is about in-laws or it's about other people. So it might be like you get with a partner and they have children. And honestly, I'd be a little bit careful because Neptune might kind of add a little bit of trickery to the situation where there might be times where you know what your intuition is saying and you kind of know what the vibe is, but then you still kind of go, and that might end up where you are in these relationships or situations where people don't tell you that they have kids or they have a partner already, or that there's something going on in their life and you don't know what it is. And Neptune also rules your 4th house, so it might mean that a lot of you are getting tangled up with the past in some way, shape, or form. Not all of you, obviously, but if we're just going to keep it 100%, you know, Neptune isn't really a good or bad planet. At least in my eyes, it kind of just seems like it's going to add a little bit of confusion when it comes to how you approach your self-expression, especially because at the beginning of this transit, Jupiter is in your 8th house. So it's kind of like you're a little bit blindsided right now by deeper emotions, things of your family, especially your mother, and also your home, your roots, your past. So a lot of you might feel very disconnected from yourself, and you might kind of feel like there's nothing to lose. And on one hand, you know, it's creating a sense of freedom and fun, but on the other hand, you might kind of just feel like you're floating by mindlessly, which might be manifesting in emotional spending, emotional interactions with people where you get physical, or it just might be that you feel very drained in other aspects of your life that were previously a huge source of fun and enjoyment and pleasure for you. And I think that especially with the Mars retrograde that's going to come next year in January in Virgo, a lot of you might really get locked down with your career and your work. Not in the sense that like, oh, like this is going to be an area of your life where you have to get responsible, because again, Saturn's trining your ascendant. So it's kind of like it will kind of flow very freely, but maybe sometimes you'll kind of feel like you don't really have much say in the matter and it just kind of happens to you, and then you're kind of just moving based on that. So I think a lot of you get very serious about public exposure and your work and your reputation, and you know where you're trying to find your job and what you're trying to do with your status. And I also think that Saturn in Aries is also just going to be like a time where a lot of you get more serious about having fun and enjoying yourself and doing things that you like to do, but maybe you felt like you weren't able to really sit down and do those things, whatever that might be. You know, it makes me think of like hobbies, going out. Maybe a lot of you are trying to build relationships that are a little bit more built on mutuality and what you like, you know, because Aries is inherently selfish, and then Saturn will restrict. So it's kind of this balance that a lot of you are maybe having to find. And, Saturn will be opposing your 11th house. So a lot of you might go through some falling outages with friends, or a lot of you might just kind of decide like, oh, like I think I need to cut cords with certain people or let go of a dream or a vision. And I honestly think that because Saturn just finished up in your 4th house by this point, maybe a lot of you are shedding responsibilities and burdens that your family imposed upon you, or a lot of you might start to sort through that emotionally and like on a spiritual level, especially with Neptune in the mix. Maybe this could be something about like your beliefs and your religion and your background in your past. But I think that Saturn in Aries will be a very grounding energy for you in some way, shape, or form, where a lot of you are getting to know yourself on a more intimate level, especially at the beginning with Saturn being in a fire sign. And then later on in 2026, we're also going to see Jupiter move through Leo, and it will trine each other. So it's kind of like a 5th and 9th house trine with Jupiter and, Saturn. It kind of makes me think that a lot of you build self-worth this year when it comes to, traveling, believe, going back to school. It might be that a lot of you isolate yourself, or it might be that a lot of you decide to pull away in some aspect of your life to be a little bit more reasonable, to be a bit more pragmatic. But this could also just be like monetizing a hobby. I think that, of course, this is a longer transit, so it can go any which way, but I feel very confident in saying that the first year and a half, or the first half of this transit, will probably be a time where a lot of you are feeling very refreshed, and you feel like there's a lot of new energy in your life, and it's an opportunity for you to just know yourself more. But the second half of the transit, it might feel a little bit kind of boring, and a lot of you might kind of like revert in some way, because I just personally noticed that Saturn moving through, entering Aries, it's just kind of buzzkills, and it might kind of feel like it's a little bit of extra work to have fun. Excuse me, especially if you've been like all work, no play, Sagittarius. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. So I think the vibe here is to really get serious about incorporating enjoyment and pleasure into your life, because I think that a lot of Sag risings, especially going into this transit, it's been an emotional time. A lot of Sag risings have been in the hospital, all work, no play, taking care of kids, being busy with family stuff, having to do the things that you don't really want to do and aren't necessarily your responsibility either. People taking advantage of your good nature, or just kind of realizing that there's a lot of family stuff going on, or a lot of personal matters that shouldn't require as much emotional investment as it has. And I think that as Saturn goes into Aries, this will be an opportunity for a lot of you all to get more serious about like, hey, like I want to make time for fun. Like I want to make time to do the things that I want to do, especially if a lot of you have been feeling pulled in a bunch of different directions because of your interpersonal relationships and your social circles. Like I said, that opposition to your 11th house, it's like, oh, like what other people might want for you, what other people might suggest for you, and then, deciding like, I really don't want to do those things. I want to do what I want to do, and I want to do what makes me feel pleasurable. So I also think that because the 5th house can be about like taking risks and gambling, I would not do those things throughout this transit, TBH. Like you might kind of just feel like you're a penny short and like a minute late. So I wouldn't do stuff like gambling. I wouldn't do hookups. I wouldn't do anything that requires, you really need to think through things. That's really the best way to say it. This transit will really incentivize you to really think before you do certain things, especially if you have been living off a whim for a while, where you decide to do things very last minute and you've been very spontaneous and impulsive. Whereas on the other hand, if you've had too much structure in your life and you've been too focused on an itinerary, it just means that you're loosening up a little bit more and learning to have more fun. It's restricting what you have been doing in a 5th house theme prior to the transit, so it's like one or the other, there will be a balance found, but it will definitely be frustrating, and there will be a huge emphasis on health. I especially think that because Mars will be in Virgo later on in 2027, it definitely leads me to believe, because Mars is going to be in Virgo for a while. I don't even know how long it's going to be in there, but it's going to be in there for a while, like over like a month or so, way longer maybe. And so it kind of just makes me think that a lot of Sag risings are getting more serious about their health, about their diet. And I think this will be a little bit easier because Uranus will be out of your 6th house by this point. So accessibility to food, digestive tracts, and, keeping track of, like how much you go to the bathroom, all that good stuff, especially because Mars likes to detox. And, you know, there might be a period of time where a lot of you get addicted to energy, you know, because I noticed that Mars Virgo natally really likes to drink energy drinks, or it struggles with to like get rest because it's always doing something. It's very busy. So I definitely think that as this year progresses, Sagittarius, you might find that a lot of you are really, really busy, you know, publishing things, opening businesses, going back and forth of property, family, children, you know. It's kind of like, it might feel like some of you sometimes are haggling with, or like going back and forth with the American dream, you know, for those of you that live in the States. But I think it's pretty safe to say that across the board, this will be a very busy transit for you as time moves forward. But don't lose sight of your inner child, and don't lose sight of, you know, governing your life with playfulness and with enjoyment and pleasure, because otherwise you might kind of just feel like there's points in your life where you're just not having a lot of fun. Ask the Virgo risings. Oh my gosh. But there will be times where a lot of you are just like, oh, I have to have fun. I don't want to do that right now. I'd rather just stay home and work and get stuff done. But it's just like, that's not a way to live. Under this transit, it will show that if you're disciplined about incorporating enjoyment into your life, good things will happen, you know? And because Saturn was your second house, it will bring money, it will bring self-confidence, it will bring security and stability. But definitely keep track of what you're consuming and how you do energy, and make sure to get plenty of rest throughout the beginning of this transit, especially because Neptune's there, you know, so a lot of you might have like interesting dreams, or a lot of you might get very confused about like water. I think that this summer will be a very good time, Sag, if you haven't already, to like go swimming and stuff like that. So definitely dive into stuff where it involves having fun with like water, take a nice bath. Interesting enough, a lot of you might be looking for places to live that have really nice bathrooms, or like pools, or like jacuzzis or something like that. So that's just random enough. Let's see what card comes out for you. Oh my gosh, we have the 10 of coins. What a lovely card. So it definitely, like I said, I think that Saturn and Aries is going to be a really, really good transit for you, Sagittarius. I don't think that it will be bad. I think that there will be times where maybe it feels a little bit difficult, but like I said, it will be nowhere near as bad as Saturn and Pisces. That was a trip and a half, and I think that you should know that you have an easier few years ahead of you. It will be a little bit more simplistic. It will be a little bit more stripped back. Not that it's going to be a cakewalk or anything, but I think that considering what you've been through in these past like 2-3 years, this will definitely be a change of pace for you, where you're making more time and you're considering your feelings and your body a lot more. And this will subsequently make way for a lot of other good things in your life. And it will probably invite some sort of stability or some kind of financial abundance, especially because like Sagittarius, with Jupiter moving through your 8th house, a lot of you have probably been paying off debt or taking care of money. So I think that with your second house rule trining your ascendant, it will be easier to make money, or it will be easier to run into money. Or Saturn in the 5th, or in ruling your second house, it makes me think of like calculated business risks. That's what that makes me think of. So take that for what it is, Sagittarius. I think that these next 2 years will definitely bring in some kind of abundance or fulfillment, you know, whether it be like a picture perfect family, the home of your dreams, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, that's what I have for you, Sagittarius. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the horoscope resonated, and if it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye. I love you. Okay, so now we have Aries rising. So hello, Aries rising. If you're seeing this, this will be your horoscope for Saturn and Aries. So Saturn will be in Aries from February 14th up until about spring of 2028, maybe like April. That's when we'll start to see things kind of like loosen up. But I wanted to focus on Saturn and Aries at first with Neptune, and then with Mars retrograde that will come up later next year in January, and it will be in Virgo. So there is definitely a huge emphasis on health with this transit for you, Aries, as well as wellness. And also something about like your relationships, because Saturn in your first house will be opposing your 7th house. So it will be kind of like a balancing out, you know? And a lot of you might either feel stunted or slowed down or disciplined by interpersonal relationships or business connections or even legal matters. But I think that at first, Saturn in Aries definitely, it seems like a lot of y'all felt kind of like, can I just be honest? A lot of you felt kind of not on, you know, when the beginning of Saturn and Aries, you know. And with Neptune, first of all, a lot of you might be going swimming or like something with water, like water therapy, or like drinking more water in order to, you know, sculpt your body, or in order to be a little bit more disciplined about your body. So this could also be like the fluids that you drink, or maybe there will be something about fluids in your body. It makes me think of like blood levels, saliva, you know, what your body is secreting, and, you know, like your urine, that could be something else, you know. And especially with Mars that will retrograde in Virgo, it kind of makes me think of like substances, and, you know, like, because Mars likes to detox, and Virgo is like about, you know, the intestines, it's about your digestive tract. So a lot of you might be detoxing throughout the course of this year and the beginning of like the first half of next year. Honestly, like it will be kind of like a slow buildup where a lot of you are kind of getting into that, you know. A lot of you could be getting really into working out, moving about, taking care of your body. And, you know, Saturn restricts too, so it's like restricting your body in some way, shape, or form. And Saturn usually deals with like the bones, the teeth, the joints, and also like hair, skin, and nails. Like it can be associated with those things too. So these might be parts of your body where a lot of you are, you know, like, you know, and Aries is the head, so I noticed that a lot of Aries placements, Aries risings, you like to edit your hair and like cutting it, dyeing it. So this might be something where maybe a lot of you are holding yourself back, you know, from like messing with your hair and whatnot. Or it might be that a lot of you are trying to lose weight, or a lot of you might be trying to, you know, take care of a specific bodily system. And especially at first, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Aries risings, if you've had bad health, especially if you're like a later degree, like 20 to 29 degrees, because Chiron has been moving through your first house, and then we've had Jupiter square your ascendant. So it's like a lot of healing with like the mother, and, you know, Saturn is the father, and Saturn rules your 10th house. So a lot of you could be having some interesting interpersonal connections with your father and taking care of him in some way, shape, or form. Or it might be that if you do live with a father figure, or if there's emphasis on a father figure in your life in some way, shape, or form, whether it be metaphorical and more spiritual, or whether it be more literal and like, you know, like 3D, this is just the energy of your life that you will probably be sorting out in some way, shape, or form. And I really recommend that you don't get so frustrated about it, because I think that this will be a time where a lot of you are having to backtrack several times in order to take care of something in your life, you know. Saturn ruling your 10th house really shows, and, you know, opposing your 7th house, that's a lot of angles. So it kind of just makes me think that there's something going on here with like your relationships, and when it comes to your career and your work. And especially because Jupiter will be finishing up in your 4th house this summer, it definitely makes me think that a lot of you have built some sort of foundation in your inner world, you know, pulling back, taking care of family stuff, dealing with expansion in the family. So a lot of you throughout this transit maybe have dealt with siblings or relatives. Jupiter makes me think of like in-laws and stuff, especially because Jupiter rules your 9th house. So a lot of you could have people who are marrying into the family, having children, or meeting sides of your family whom you've never met before. And, you know, it's just kind of like a lot of that. And I think that with Saturn moving through your 1st house and then Jupiter finishing up in your 4th house, it's kind of like, okay, like I've taken care of like the personal stuff. I want to worry about what I want to do and what I want to take care of in my career and my business. And then with that Mars retrograde in your 6th house, take care of your health from here on out, Aries. I've noticed that Aries placements have had like a very, see, like, why is the sun in my face? Can I post for a thumbnail? Can I do that right now? I usually do a Sagittarius, but like, I don't know. Okay, that's cute. Anyways, so Mars retrograde in the 6th house, I definitely think, like I said, a lot of you could be working out and moving a lot more. But this might also be that a lot of you are rearranging something with like your work. And there might be going on something with like routines and taking care of people. I kind of want you Aries risings to be a little bit wary this year, because Jupiter is going to move into your 5th house this in early summer, I think like June. And then it will come into a trine with Saturn. So fun, pleasure, enjoyment, traveling this year, moving abroad, going somewhere you've never been before. And a lot of you might get very serious about this, you know, like maybe some of you will get a job or start working, or maybe you already do work and it is requiring you to move around a lot. It's requiring you to go somewhere that you've never been before, you know. It makes me think of like, oh, hey, like we have a business trip coming up. And then with the Mars retrograde, you know, it's kind of like you are Mars, and then retrograding in the 6th house and dealing with that, wrestling with health, you know, maybe not being able to take opportunities, or having to go back and forth with your body in order to see like, oh, like I don't know if my body can take me flying back and forth. maybe some of you will maybe even be dealing with something about like school and you're having to just juggle a lot, you know. Like I think you Aries placements just always need something to do, you know. You're very like, okay, I'm gonna wake up at 6 a.m. and then I'm gonna go to work until, you know, from like 9 to 5, and then right after that I'm gonna go to the gym, go to school, go to my night class, and then go hang out with my friends, you know. So it's like a lot of you up until this point have been living a very hectic life, and it kind of seems like there's not much of an opportunity to really breathe. And I think that with Uranus moving into your third house, a lot of you might be incorporating technology throughout this transit as well in order to bring more fun or more structure into your life. So it kind of makes me think of like getting like an Apple Watch, or it makes me think of getting like other pieces of technology or gadgets that will allow you to govern your life a little bit more differently. And then especially with Mars moving through your sixth house of health and habits. And then, you know, with like Jupiter in your fifth, it kind of makes me think like maybe some of you are like serving children or having to take care of like, you know, children's like in-laws and stuff like that. So that could definitely be relevant for some of you. So take care. But I know that's not what all of you want to hear. That's why I'm saying like, oh, like pay attention and be careful about boundaries now. If there's anything that you don't want to do in this transit, I think that the very beginning of it, literally as soon as Saturn moves into Aries, it's going to be very literal, especially if you're anywhere between like 0 to 5 degrees of Aries rising. Like you are going to notice the effects of this transit immediately. Like you probably already feel it by the time I'm uploading this. You've probably been feeling it. And so it's like, if there's anything in your personal connections that you don't want to deal with right now, you need to deal with it now and be very, very clear about, you know, communication and saying things. At first, it might be a little bit hard because Mercury retrograde will be happening shortly after Saturn moves into Aries. So, and you know, this is important because Mercury is in Neptune's territory and Neptune is in your first house. So a lot of you right now might be having to pivot in some way, shape, or form when it comes to your routines and your health. So there might be a little bit of a sloppy start to this transit where it's a little bit hard to communicate or focus on like your spirituality, or maybe some of you are wanting to be alone more and, you know, like take care of yourself, but you're just not able to because of something going on with like work or something going on with communication and whatnot. Maybe even cars, and maybe you're having to go back and forth with something about transportation at the beginning of this transit. But I think definitely with time and when you get out of this transit, Aries, a lot of you will be feeling like you have a little bit more government over your life, especially because I just think that a lot of you have been moving into this transit kind of feeling like, you know, the tide's taking you wherever. So I think that a lot of you will get a very good job under this transit, Aries. I think that a lot of you will find like a dream job or finally get your career to take off, because I've noticed that y'all have been really, really concerned about this part of your life. Like y'all have been like almost obsessed with finding a job, making the right amount of money, and making sure that things are taken care of. So I definitely think that that's something that will be happening to you, and this will bring you good things. But you can ask those Pisces placements and also those Aquarius placements, you know, from the past like 6 years. It's just going to be a little bit difficult at first, and it might sometimes be very aggressive. You know, Saturn don't like being in Aries, so it's kind of like, you know, like biting, like digging your nails into your palms and like biting your lip, you know, just, oh, like I want to do this, I can't, but I have to wait, and I have to be patient, and I have to do all of the boring work and stay consistent, you know, and I have to set my foot down with people who are trying, and things that are trying to pull me away from that, you know. So it's this sense of like, okay, like let me get down to business and let me really stick to it, you know, especially if you're trying to see results when it comes to your career, your body, and your sense of health and well-being, and also your social circles and your dreams. So it's like you have a vision in mind going into this transit, and it will help you achieve that as long as you stick to it. Okay, let's see what card comes out for you. Yeah, for you, we have the Star. Interesting because this card is ruled by Aquarius, which is associated with Saturn. So I definitely think that this will be very healing for you. It will bring a lot of hope. I feel like a lot of Aries placements are going into this transit feeling like, oh, like I don't really know what to do with myself. I don't know what I see in my future. Like this isn't what I want for myself in the long term. This isn't what I want to keep doing for the rest of my life. You know, like I want something new. I want something exciting, you know, like I want more hopes and dreams, and I want to accomplish these hopes and dreams, but I also want to adopt hopes and dreams that are actually mine, not something that I just need to take care of in order to help my family or helps my partner or something like that, you know. I think that a lot of you will release yourself from the grasp of another person or the grasp of an idea or a concept, and it will bring a lot, it will be very cathartic for you, and it will bring some sort of hope, you know, like there will be something of a light of it at the end of the tunnel, like something that you want to do that will just really appeal to you, and it'll just be like, oh, like maybe something good will happen to me, you know, maybe something is worth fighting for, maybe something is worth, you know, being patient for, you know. There will be a sense of commitment with a purpose throughout this transit for you. Anyways, that's what I have for you, Aries. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck. I hope the horoscope resonated, and if it did, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye. I love you. So now we're at Taurus rising. So hello, Taurus rising. If you're seeing this, this will be a horoscope for Saturn and Aries. And honestly, Taurus, I think that Saturn and Aries for you will definitely, the change will be very inside out, because this moving through your 12th house. Mind you, Saturn is going to be in Aries from February 14th, 2026 up until I think April of 2028. Somewhere in the spring of 2028 is when it'll start probably ping-ponging back and forth. But I say inside out because this is a precursor for Saturn moving into your first house in a few years. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of you are well aware of that. But I think that Saturn and Aries will be like the groundwork, you know, the emotional work. How are you uprooting things deep in your psyche? And if you're like one of those people who like believes in like karma and like past life, like how are those things integrated in your body? And even if that's not the case, it's just kind of like, it makes me think of like your subconscious. So especially Aries can be about the self, it can be about anger, it can be about conflict. And so how are these things integrated in your subconscious, and how are they manifesting in terms of how you heal yourself? So a lot of you, it might do you a lot of good, or you might just be taking a step back in order to meditate on these things a lot. So like especially Aries, it makes me think of like moving the body. And you know, next year around this time we will be seeing a Mars retrograde in Virgo. So I kind of get the vibe that a lot of you might be doing something health related and like moving about in order to release subconscious things. So like yoga, hot yoga, Pilates, or like meditations and whatnot, things of that nature, where you are moving your body in order to rewire your brain or to rewire your subconscious. And a lot of you could be doing dream work. Aries is about anger too, so, and I feel like a lot of Taurus risings have a lot of repressed anger. So it might be that throughout this transit, you're kind of releasing them and you're letting that go. And it will probably start to manifest in your physical body if you continue to bottle things up. So Saturn in the 12th, definitely take care to not self-isolate, self-sabotage too much, or be too self-destructive, because there might be times where a lot of you feel angry or frustration or anything of that, you know, like just a negative emotion that causes you to be like aggressive or causes you to be frustrated in some way. And by no means am I trying to saying that Saturn in Aries is just going to be one of those dump transits where you just feel angry and like your life is just going to, you know, trash the whole time. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying that is that this will be a huge opportunity for you to truly sit with yourself and kind of sit still for a little bit and to really figure out who you are. And then when Saturn moves into your first house, it will be an opportunity to really integrate those things and move forward with a little bit of more authenticity. And a lot of you may have like kids, or your relationship with kids could definitely be significant throughout this transit, because Mars will be moving through your 5th house by the time next year rolls around. And Mars will be in shadow starting like this fall. So like you're going to start feeling it even as like summer ends this year, you know? So it's not like, oh, like you have a whole year. It's like you're going to start feeling it as this year progresses. However, because Saturn and Neptune will be moving into your 12th house together, I think that Neptune will actually really help you. I think that Neptune will, because it rules your 11th house, people will want to support you, like people want to help you, or like you'll just have a good intuition for looking for others. A lot of you might even feel like a little bit alienated, or you might kind of feel like there's a little bit of difficulty with finding people who relate to you. And I definitely think that with Saturn moving through your 11th house, these past 3 years have probably been a little bit tumultuous when it comes to your interpersonal connections and meeting the right people. And maybe there's just been a lot of times where you just feel like very alienated, or you're kind of just feeling like you're always having to compromise what it is that you want to do or what you find enjoyment in, and having to sort of like give that up in order to maintain certain connections in your life. And I think that a lot of you have probably either let go of somebody or decided to go out on a hunt to look for people who are more conducive to you as a person. And I have noticed that a lot of Taurus risings have self-isolated or been alone, and maybe just been like a little bit kind of held back by the people that they're around, or like the ideals and the environment that they're in, which is by no means a bad thing. I think that a lot of you have some incredible, self-protection tendencies, and especially with Jupiter moving through your third house, you've been doing so through like communication, talking to people, and maybe finding outlets and comfort in social media, internet, maybe even immediate family members, or maybe immediate family members have been relevant in the conflict that has been going on in your life, when it comes to how you connect and communicate with people, and when it comes to your well-being. Especially because Saturn in the 12th is going to be opposing your 6th house. So there will be a lot of like back and forth when it comes to, like, oh, like I want to be alone. I just want to spend time and be dreamy and think of ways to find improvement and rest and rejuvenation and healing. But at the same time, it might clash with your tendencies to be more realistic and to get a move on in your life. And maybe even something about service. So if there is like a sense of like you own a business, or you work with people who you're always providing some sort of service and giving back to people, I also think that this will be a huge opportunity for a lot of you to get very serious about your boundaries and your beliefs, especially because Saturn also rules your 9th house. So maybe for a lot of you, you could also just be traveling to foreign lands or going somewhere that you've never been before for a work purpose, or it might just be that traveling is kind of interfering with like a with a work or routine situation. So these next few years, there might be a lot of stuff going on of like hiring nannies, people that can consult, or like you can consult and receive help from. And maybe there's something going on here as well of like just finding people like who can like house sit, dog sit, or and maybe a lot of you are giving away pets, or a lot of you are getting rid of animals, or maybe some of you are getting animals in order to constitute more warmth and more affection in your life. But I think the point is that a lot of you, can I just be real? I kind of get the sense that a lot of Taurus risings have been trying to substitute things for genuine human connection. And I think that Saturn and Aries will, like force you to get very serious about this aspect of your life, at least on an emotional level, where you're observing your side of the river. And then whenever you move into Saturn and Taurus and it opposes your 7th house, a lot of you will start to actually like integrate these lessons and get very serious about finding the people who you actually should be with, and finding people who you actually want to commit with, or you'll find people who want to commit to you, and you're having to kind of like, like realize this and, weave it into your life in some way, shape, or form. And, the nice thing is that Jupiter will also move into your 4th house, which, by the way, I think, in this year, and I think like the summer, I think it will be a little bit like this year might kind of just feel very in your face. And a lot of you at times might feel very alone. A lot of you could be moving somewhere foreign. A lot of you could be becoming a little bit more financially independent, or a lot of you might be seeing like increasing financial burdens when it comes to your family, your living situation, your home, and like other members. Like you might have to take care of somebody, or you might have to like take the lead in some way, especially with like Saturn in Aries opposing your 6th house. It kind of makes me think of like having to be independent, providing services, people relying on you, and feeling like you don't really have people who can help you. But I also feel like that's where it'll come in to look for services that can like, you can book or take, spend money on, and it will really help you and make your life a little bit easier, especially if you are like traveling or moving abroad, or if there's something going on with like family and like your in-laws and whatnot. And then this is you trying to bring more people into the picture to help you pivot and bring in a little bit more assistance. But I think that Saturn, the reason why I think that Neptune being in your 12th house will be nice is because Neptune's pretty familiar with the 12th house and what it can do. So I think that you should really use this first chunk of the transit to really meditate. Neptune is water, and Aries is like hot water. Like Aries, like to me, is like very hot. So a lot of you could be going to like saunas, or it might do you a lot of good to go to saunas and spas, or when people boil a pot of water and they just put their head over it and whatnot, or like meditating in the warmth and whatnot. It also makes me think, 12th house can be about like foreign land. So maybe some of y'all are trying to go to like a tropical vacation or something like that. And then once Mars retrogrades in your 5th house next year, a lot of you could be getting more serious about integrating these things into your life. You know, you may be like, man, I want to go to Cancun. Man, I want to go to Bora Bora, or I really want to go to like Indonesia or something like that. You know, like going somewhere where you've never been before. And Aries is about independence. And you know, Saturn does restrict and Neptune is a little bit unrealistic. So it's maybe like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna go to Bora Bora. But then like when you get into it, it's like, oh, like I gotta get past the plane tickets and like, oh, like maybe I just need money. So, you know, you as a Taurus rising, you'll attract good things. And then you're like, wait a second, I need to get, you know, hire people to take care of the dogs while I'm gone. I need to find someone to house it. I didn't even know I needed to do this. I need to do this, this, and that, you know? It might be that a lot of you are realizing that there's a lot of energy that goes into rearranging your life and making sure that nothing falls apart while you're gone. Especially if you are, you know, living a life where a lot of people are relying on you, counting on you, or if there's like a life that you have to very delicately curate and think about before you can leave it alone to its own devices. So I think that Saturn in Aries will teach you something about things not falling apart in the face of absence, whether it be your absence or the absence of something else. And it will cultivate a lot more independence and self, you know, Aries in your life in some way, shape, or form. And I think that it'll be really nice because a lot of you will find some loopholes where you can like cut back on labor and work, and it'll allow a lot more freedom in your life to do things that you want to do. Okay, let's shuffle the cards, see what comes out. My hands are so cold. Actually, let's take this one. Ooh, for you have the Ace of Wands. Really nice card. And I feel like it's very relevant to what we were talking about. You know, like Ace of Wands, you know, like the pen to the paper, in this case, the paintbrush, and, you know, all that fire. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you start going on creative ventures, you know, doing more, creating more art. And like, honestly, Taurus, I really just see that for you because y'all are so like hands-on. Like y'all are just so good at making beautiful things or like adding a little touch to things. And you know, like maybe this is very literal in the sense that your life is very beautiful, but it also translates into other aspects of your life because you are a creative problem solver and you are good at buying yourself time and you are good at making things a little bit more classy, a little bit more chic and smooth going. And I think that you have a way better way of like business and work and opportunity than you realize. And I think that that Mars retrograde is going to be very relevant in you integrating your beauty and your eye for detail into other aspects of your life that will make things feel a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, you know, especially if you do feel like there's a part of your life that you have to maintain that you low-key hate just to make sure that everything else is going right. Like I think that you will really sand out these rough edges of your life throughout this transit, and it will make way for a lot of inspiration and a lot more passion and fire. Anyways, that's what I have for you, Taurus. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the horoscope resonated, and if it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye. I love you. Okay, so now we're at Gemini rising. So hello, Gemini rising. If you're seeing this, this will be your horoscope for Saturn and Aries. Saturn's going to be in Aries from February 14th to 2026 until about spring of 2028. I think it's in April of that year. So for you, Saturn's moving through your 11th house. And the nice thing about this is that it is sextiling your ascendant. So the energy is a little bit more harmonious. It's a little bit less restrictive. It's a little bit less irritating. I would imagine that as a mutable rising, Saturn in Pisces has probably been a trip and a half. You know, like restrictions, irritability with like, parents, bosses, higher ups, people who are in control, higher systems, and how those things relate to religion, emotions, and boundaries. So I think that Saturn in Aries is going to be a little bit of a rebellious flair where a lot of you might be looking for people who can actively support you in some way, or looking for people who, it kind of just, you know, when people say like, oh, like my family wasn't supported, so I went out and made my own family, you know? And that doesn't have to be the case, but I am saying like that is kind of that vibe, you know, where a lot of you are looking for people in, you know, situations that are more conducive to what you believe in. And especially because we're going to have that Mars retrograde later on in 2027, but you're going to start feeling it in the fall of this year because Mars will be in shadow by that point. I think it's like, I don't remember when it is, but I just know it's in the second half of the year that Mars will be in shadow, and then it will actually station retrograde next January in like the middle of it. And so it will be in Virgo and it will be in your fourth house. So I definitely think that there is some credence to what I said about like, you know, like going out and finding your own family, because Mars will be retrograding in your fourth house and it will be there for quite some time. More than a month. That's all I know. Don't ask me. Just Google it. Just kidding. Just kidding about kidding. Like, actually go Google it. I don't know. But I definitely think that because it's in your fourth house, there will be, you know, Virgo's service and, you know, helping people. And the fourth house is your home and your family. And then with like Saturn in the 11th house, maybe this is kind of like, oh, like not being able to be around the people that I want to be around because I have to take care of my family in some way, shape, or form, you know? So it's kind of like you might feel like your life as it relates to your family is very difficult to like integrate in your social life and, you know, your friend groups and what you want to do. And it might be that a lot of you are finding some sort of balance here, because Saturn, even though it is a sextile, it is still a restriction, you know, like it still will have to, you know, require some structure, you know, especially if you've been living your life these past few years being very impulsive with your friends and very impulsive with other people and your goals and your dreams, you know, just kind of like going off the grid, you know, like starting something and be like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be this and this, and then you don't really end up finishing the project. And it might be a lot of times where you set out to go do something and you like the idea and you like the concept, but when it actually comes to doing the work and doing something about it, it might be a little bit more difficult to actually muster up that motivation and energy to make something happen from it. So I think that Saturn in Aries will present you some incredible opportunities. You know, like Saturn is long standing. It is something of an investment that will be for a really long time. You know, Saturn does not play about those things. And the 11th house is about opportunities. It's about chances. It's about shaking hands with people, you know, especially because you're a Gemini rising, Gemini rules hands. So it's like, you know, shaking hands with some really important people who will present you things on a silver platter, but it will require some sort of burden. It will require you to get very serious about something. Maybe it will be you moving far away, you know, leaving your family behind or having your own family, you know, something of that nature. And it might be very difficult, and maybe sometimes you will feel like yourself or like your identity is sort of being restricted and you're having to sort of compensate to other people in a different new way. And especially because Saturn rules your 8th house, which doesn't, you know, aspect your ascendant, there might be times where you go through like a deep change or metamorphosis in order to accommodate certain dreams and people in your life, which won't necessarily be a bad thing. I think that it will be an opportunity for you to become a lot more flexible, especially because it kind of just seems like there is like some sort of like inflexibility to you at the moment, Gemini, when it comes to like people and things and stuff that you want to do. Like you might kind of just feel like, you know, you're a little bit rigid, or you believe that things have to be done a certain way, and it causes you to come up with these very strict itineraries for your visions of the future. You know, it's like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and this, and this is how I'll get to this, you know. And you know, obviously that works for you sometimes because it makes you a very hard worker and it makes you very, what's the word, determined, and you're able to stick through some really difficult situations in order to make things happen. So Saturn ruling a very difficult house in your chart just shows that like Saturn transits aren't really that bad for you unless you have like heavy Saturnian energy in your chart or something like that. But I guess my point here is that Saturn rules a harsh house in your chart, so like no matter what Saturn's doing, it's gonna be, you're gonna feel it at a very deep visceral level. And I also think that this will be like a huge opportunity for you to like overcome some sort of like trauma or difficulty through like a support group. You know, like 11th house makes me think of like groups of people. So, and you know, sextiling your ascendant, so it's like you have to look for them and you have to go out and find these people. And then, you know, with Mars retrograding your 4th house, it'll be about like finding those people and feeling at home, feeling comfortable, and like you feel like your sense of self is actually being nursed and supported, as opposed to you just going out and like, you know, being other people or stealing personalities or something like that, whatever. Let's also like, you know, like get the elephant out of the room. The 8th house is also about money. It's about shared resources. It is about, you know, death, transformation, and also intimacy. A lot of you, I totally wouldn't be surprised if you deal with like relationships or interpersonal connections in some way, shape, or form when it comes to friend groups, especially friend groups that have been long standing in your life. So if you have been in a friend group for a very, very long time, pay attention. This transit will be very important for you. But for those of you that don't, you know, have that right now, it will probably still be very relevant to where maybe you're looking for people. And I was saying like I want to say like group therapy. You know, when people are recovering from like addiction or something, and then you look for like a group of people and you like sit in a circle, like those meetings. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but something like that, where a lot of you might be recovering from something, maybe like sobriety and whatnot, and this is you like getting together with people to help you. But there is definitely a sense of like delusion or confusion at first because Neptune will be involved, and Neptune and Saturn will be in a conjunction in your 11th house for a few weeks, maybe like, I think it's like a month or so, I don't remember, but it's longer than we'd like. And Neptune rules your 10th house as well, so I think that this will definitely be relevant to your career again, where a lot of you might be getting serious about shaking hands with people and meeting the right people. But looking at it for what it is without all of that, Neptune is a very, emotionally like confusing planet. It makes things seem a lot better than they actually are sometimes. So a lot of you might have to pivot, and maybe a lot of you are having like a dream or a realization, or you're having a dream or realization be sort of shattered by Saturn, and like, Neptune's already in your 11th house right now, so you're like, oh my gosh, like I think I just made the bestest friends in the world, or oh my gosh, I think this great thing is happening to me, oh my gosh, like I just want to do this, it sounds like such a great idea, it will take me here. And then Saturn comes in and you're just kind of like, oh, like I really need to put in the work, or oh wow, like this has like a fat bill behind it, I don't know if I should be paying all that just to make something happen that I can do on my own. It's like Saturn and Aries is very like DIY energy, so I think that a lot of you will get very thrifty about who you are around and learning from others' experiences. I think that this is a very, very good transit to read things like memoirs or like biographies and autobiographies and learning from other people's experiences. Like this is the kind of like transit that makes me think that like going out and actually surveying people's lives and seeing what they've been through and how they're feeling will be very interesting for you, and it will help you integrate something into your life, especially because like, like 8th house ruler, so like Saturn in your chart has a very psychological or like spiritual and like occult tendency. So a lot of you might even like meet people who, like to do tarot or like to do other things that are like that, other magical mystical things. And with Neptune in the mix as well, a lot of you might have some very divine interactions and encounters with certain people, like not to make it like sound like delusional and whatnot, especially because Jupiter will also move into Leo, which is, your 3rd house. So I think that a lot of you could be like going to college or something, going to school, or like attending some sort of event or class that will help you learn new things and integrate more knowledge into your life. And Jupiter rules your 7th house, so I definitely think that your relationships will be very important. What it kind of gives me? It kind of also gives me that when you like have a group of friends and then like that group of friends doesn't really hang out anymore, but you still like talk to one person who you're really close to from that friend group, that's what it kind of gives me. I think that a lot of you will be weeding certain people out of your life and decreasing your social circles and your ideas and your dreams, kind of narrating this a little bit, like running the show a little bit easier. And I don't mean that in a way that a lot of you are letting go of things or, like trashing dreams that you want to accomplish. I just think that a lot of you are getting a lot more serious about the priorities that you have, in reference to the time that you have given yourself. So it's like, I think that there will be a lot of heavy incentives throughout this transit that will let you know, like, hey, like, time's ticking, there is stuff to do. And especially as it relates to your personal relationships and the people that you're around and all these ideas that you have and all these resources that you have, with what you have right now, what can you make happen at the moment? Not like hypotheticals like, oh, like let me save up, let me do this, let me do that, like let me wait. I think that a lot of you are going to start being like, no, like I have what I need right now, right in front of me, what can I do with this? It makes me think of like when people go to like a pawn shop or something and they have like $10 and like, what can I buy with this? It's not like you're gonna come back and be like, oh, like now I have more money, or like I'll come back when I have more money. You're like, no, like I have this $10, what can I get with it right now? And I know that sounds like a little bit of a goofy analogy, but my point is that a lot of you will start to make use of what you have right in front of you, and it will allow you to bring more goodness into your life, especially with Jupiter moving into like your 3rd house. So it's like you're familiar with the 3rd house, so it's bringing you good luck in a territory that you're familiar with. So like getting hands-on, driving, moving around, creating things, talking to people, networking, social media, and whatnot. Anyways, so let me shuffle the cards and see what comes out for you. Yeah, for you, you have the Emperor. Really sweet card in this context because the Emperor is ruled by Aries. So it definitely gives me the sense that a lot of you will be taking government in your life in some way, shape, or form, or a lot of you will be working harder to be in a position of authority. The Emperor is also the father, so perhaps your relationship with your father will be very important throughout this transit, especially because, like Saturn is the father. And like, maybe you'll be getting financial help from him, or maybe you'll be receiving opportunities from him. But this could also be like, if you're a man, like maybe this is something about like your dream of having, you know, like becoming a father, or maybe a lot of you are releasing things regarding your father, or maybe some of you are looking for someone who can father your children or something of that nature, you know. And if that's not the case, I think that this just boils down to the fact that like you want to, you know, take care of something in your life and be the one to call the shots. So I think that this will be a transit that definitely helps you feel like you're a little bit more in control in some aspect of your life. And, you know, based on what I've said before, maybe it's related to the people that you're around. Anyways, that's what I have for you, Gemini. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the horoscope resonated. And if it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye. I love you. All right, so now we're at Cancer rising. So hello, Cancer rising. If you're seeing this, this will be your horoscope for Saturn in Aries. And Saturn will be in Aries from February 14, 2026 up until April of 2028. I know it's around spring of 2028. That's when Saturn will start kind of like ping-ponging out of Aries and Taurus and whatnot. But for you, Saturn will be moving through your 10th house. And you probably already heard by this point that the 10th house is a lot about your career, your work, and your status. And I definitely feel like there's a lot of credence to that. And I think that a lot of Cancer risings are going to get very, very serious about their work in some way, shape, or form in the next few years. And, you know, Aries is about self. And a lot of you might feel like there's like a delay or frustration or having to pivot and go back and forth with something when it comes to your work. And I say like a delay because Saturn will be opposing your 4th house. And it actually makes me think of like, you know, when people have to move back home with their parents to kind of get something else off the floor, off the ground before they can start to move forward. And I'm not saying like that will be the immediate situation that kind of happens to you. I just been noticing that a lot of Cancer risings have been dealing with like long distance stuff or something about like school or something about like family. And I think that Saturn and Aries will be something revolving around that, where you have to get very serious about something in your life, because it's like there's something going on and you're kind of like, okay, like my living situation is kind of at the heart of it. So how is my living situation going to have to be bent around or changed in order to compensate these new developments in my work and career? So it's like you get a new promotion, but you have to move across the country for it to happen, you know? And we're also going to have a Mars retrograde at the beginning of 2027, literally right in January. But you'll probably start to feel the effects this year because Mars will station shadow in the second half of this year. And it will be in Virgo, which is your 2nd house. So I would imagine that a lot of it's related to money and your finances and your confidence and what you have available to you. And because it's in Virgo, it's probably, or no, not your 2nd house, your 3rd house. Sorry. I know you're kind of like, that is not, you know, your 3rd house, but anyhow, I definitely think that your money will still be relevant in some way, shape, or form, because Jupiter will also be moving into your 2nd house this summer. So I think that a lot of you will see some sort of like expense or like, you know, expansion in your financial realm. This isn't about Jupiter and Leo, but I think that because Jupiter is going to be in a trine with Saturn, the energy is, you know, like, you know, it kind of work together. And I think that a lot of you will be getting a lot more confident about doing things in your life. And a lot of you will start to realize like, oh, like, you know, certain experiences will happen, like traveling or like an increase in like financial responsibility that will at first be very stressful, but it will also be very conducive to what's going on next year. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you buy a car, or a lot of you, you know, like sell a car and then you decide to go from like public transportation instead, and it like saves you a bunch of money, you know? So I think that the way that transportation and whatnot and how that works out in your life will be very important to you, and it will be kind of another thing that kind of gets the Saturn and Aries transit moving along literally. So I think that a lot of you will be establishing independence in some way, shape, or form. And if you don't drive, or if you just have yet to get your license or something, I think that this transit will be very relevant in you doing something like that. I also want to say that before I started filming your reading, Cancer, the 10th house also reminds me of parents, especially the father, but you know, it's opposing your 4th house. So it's like your parents in some way, shape, or form will probably also be involved in this. But for those of you who aren't dealing with your parents, you know, Mars will retrograde in your 3rd house, which can be about immediate family. It can be about coworkers. It can be about people whom you see on a day-to-day basis. So I think that a lot of you might be dealing with somebody in your life who maybe is being overly restricting or trying to govern your life too much, and Saturn rules your seventh house. So it's like, there's really no escaping this, if I'm going to be honest with you. I think that one way or another, you will run into people who are being particularly restricting or, too much with you, or like maybe people who are like irritating. That's just the truth. And I think that a lot of, and I don't mean this in a way that's like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to deal with that. I think that you've already been dealing with that. I think a lot of Cancer risings have already dealt with a lot of frustrations and pitfalls and kind of having to do something over again in their interpersonal relationships. And this will very much persist in the next year or so. But I think that a lot of you will get a little bit more hang of it, or there's just something that needs to happen to where you finally snap and you decide to do something on your own, as opposed to governing, like your life around somebody in your life or around certain people. Like you're kind of getting tired of like anticipating the people around you and how they're going to behave in the face of some of the actions that you decide to take. So it's kind of like, you know what, screw you guys, I want to do my own thing. If you want to be mad about it, then be mad about it, especially if you do have like siblings and immediate relatives, because obviously you as a Cancer rising, you're probably a little bit more emotional and sensitive to your family members, whether you like to admit it or not. So this will probably be a relevant theme. And Mars brings conflict, and Saturn is restricting. So a lot of you might be dealing with like having to like be passive aggressive or like navigate this aspect of your life very carefully. That's what I'll say. And I also think that this will be very obvious about like service and providing some sort of service and teaching people, and Mars in the third house in Virgo. Third house makes me think of hands. It makes me think of consultations. It makes me think of like talking, language, computers, technology, social media. And Virgo to me is about helping others. It's about service. It's about health. It's about routine. It's about instructions. And with those two things integrated, I think that they will be somehow relevant to, or not somehow, but I think that they will be kind of a vibe that is set down when it comes to your career. So a lot of you could be opening up some sort of business or contributing to something, receiving a lot of services or giving a lot of services. And this will just overall probably be a very busy transit for you. I think that as 2026, continues to simmer, you might realize that it starts reaching a boiling point this winter. And a lot of you might feel like you have a lot of responsibilities on your plate and a lot of things to do. And like I said, it will probably start to, like affect your transportation, your living situation, and your family. And a lot of you may have to like pivot and somehow manage this aspect of your life a little bit differently so that it functions a little bit more smoothly. This is kind of random, but it kind of makes me think of like when people become famous, they have to protect their family too, and like so that their family doesn't get harassed or get dragged into it, or like like kind of makes me think of like NDAs and stuff like that. So I don't know, if you're a famous person watching this, like that might be relevant for some of you, especially because Saturn does rule your seventh house. So it's like I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you have to consult a lawyer or like a legal worker in some way, shape, or form throughout this transit in order to make sure that things move a little bit smoothly in your personal life. I also want to say that because Neptune will be here too, I want to say that Neptune and Aries together, like Aries makes me think of like leaders, and Neptune's like, I think we're already seeing this out in the world, but for you, it might feel very especially relevant. So like you might be dealing with people who are overly aggressive, overly, like controlling and oppressive based on their religious beliefs or their emotions, feelings, and there might be like a difficulty of having to set boundaries of like bosses and stuff. And I feel like this is all very relevant to how you'll be operating your career, because you'll be like, oh, I'm tired of being bossed around, or I'm tired of people, like putting their beliefs and their values on me, like I want to do what I want to do. And especially because Jupiter will move into your second house later this year, it's like you'll be having audacity, Cancer. You know what I'm saying? Excuse me. This is like y'all be talking back, y'all will start fights, and you're not going to be afraid to do what it is that you want to do. So I think that this will be a really nice thing for you, especially if you feel like you've been having a difficult time speaking up in some regard of your life. But definitely, I also think that a lot of you could be dealing with something of like the internet, like I said. So like social media, opening up social media, content creation. And if that's not the case, maybe like opening up a website. But I also think that a lot of you could be like, because Aries is the self, and then like Mars retrograde in the third house makes me think of like, like conflict of like the internet and, having to like I don't know why I just thought like restraining orders, or I thought like cybersecurity. So I want to say like Cancer, throughout this transit, make sure you're really keeping track of your passwords, make sure you're keeping track of your internet and whatnot, because this might be a sore spot for some of you. And I think that a lot of you will see like a little bit of an exaggerated energy this spring in 2026, because you're going to see Jupiter come into another square with Chiron. And whatever was going on in the winter and fall of 2025 when it comes to your emotional well-being, your sense of belief, and how that relates to your work, your career, and the people around you, like in terms of like higher ups, that will be coming up again, especially if it was like causing a wound or something when it comes to like like your parents and whatnot. But I think that Jupiter finishing up in your first house will be really nice, because I think that Jupiter in your first house has probably been really annoying and very difficult. A lot of you maybe have like, like gained weight, or maybe a lot of you may have been dealing with like, being less mobile, or you just might be feeling like you've gone through a lot in the past year on like a spiritual, like emotional level. And this is you having to actually like integrate that in your life in some way, shape, or form. But I think that because Saturn will be squaring your ascendant, like a lot of you will be feeling this very strongly. And with Neptune in the mix, there might be very like emotionally confusing, and there might be a lot of haze when it comes to, like, oh yeah, like that's fine, Be careful of giving people an inch. I think that if you want some advice to feel like you're a little bit more in control of this transit and how it begins, set boundaries now. Don't do what you don't want to do to appease others. If you start a job and someone's like, hey, can you do this? I know it's not your job, but we're not going to pay you enough, but like, can you just do this as a favor? You're a nice person. Don't do it. Don't do it, Cancer. Okay. You really need to set boundaries now. Okay. Like this week, like when you're seeing this video, like you need to start telling people no a lot more, and you need to start being a little bit more stubborn. And I'm sure a lot of you are already doing that, but like, if that's not the case, do it. But if you're already doing it with people around you, like do it more with the people who are interpersonally involved in your life, especially if you feel like your family or your home or your personal connections are in some way interfering with your goals and your visions and what you want to accomplish. But I definitely think that a lot of you Cancers will come out of this transit feeling like you have a better head on your shoulders. No pun intended, Aries rules ahead. But, on top of that, I think that you'll just feel like you have a little bit more sense of direction in your life, and you'll have to restart in some way, shape, or form. But I think that it will be a good thing, because you'll have a lot more knowledge going into it, because Jupiter has been moving through your first house. So it's like you've probably seen a lot by now. Or like traveled and kind of, spent time to be alone. Oh yeah, for you, we have death. See, the way that this card is depicted in this deck is that she's about to reveal something. So, and she's about to see something that maybe she didn't want to see. And I think that a lot of you will definitely have that kind of moment, and I think that with Neptune being in the mix, maybe some of you have been very delusional about some aspect of your life in regards to some kind of goal and what you're contributing to, especially it makes me think of like, oh, like I work at this corporation and I really like it. And then you find out like what they're doing with like some workers or what they're doing behind the scenes, and you're kind of like, this is so corrupt, like I can't do this anymore, like I want to go out and do my own thing. It's like, especially with Mars and Virgo, it makes me think like, oh, like I want to do something where I'm helping people, contributing, giving back to my immediate community, the people around me, the people who are right next to me, whoever's sitting next to me on the subway and stuff like that. It's like a lot of you will want to make more of a direct impact in some way in your life. And I think that with the death card, it will be like there's a massive change in your life that allowed you to actually feel more connected to that dream and that goal, instead of expecting some sort of bigger engine to do it for you, or like hoping that your contributions are doing something. Like throughout this transit, and by the time you come out of it, you'll be feeling like the effort that you're putting in, it's actually going somewhere, it's actually achieving what it is that you want. Anyways, that's all I have for you, Cancer. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the horoscope resonated, and if it did, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye, I love you. Okay, now we have Leo rising. So hello, Leo rising. If you are seeing this, this will be your horoscope for Saturn and Aries, and Saturn will be in Aries from February 14th up until February 14th, 2026 until April of 2028, somewhere around there. I know it'll be like spring of 2028 that when Saturn starts, like ping ponging back and forth between like Aries and Taurus. Now for you, Saturn will be moving through your 9th house, and praise the Lord, hallelujah, like whatever else you want to say, like hail, like, okay, that's all I'm going to say, because I don't know like if other religious terms are appropriate to be said, but like just think whatever's out there, whatever you believe in, that quite literally, because Saturn's moving into your ninth house, like I believe that's kind of ironic, but like it's moving out your eighth house, so no more emotional spending, no more being poor, no more credit card bills, no more asking people for money, no more gambling, no more gambling. You shouldn't be gambling anymore, Leo. No, you shouldn't. Anyways, in all seriousness though, Leo, I think that Saturn moving into your ninth house will be a very, very nice transit for you, because I don't know what's going on with y'all, but like the financial issues that y'all have dealt with Saturn and Pisces, or like the emotional things that you went through, like, can we just be real? Like, that's kind of traumatizing, Like, I saw y'all go into this transit being like, hey, y'all, like, we kind of in our thriving era. Y'all coming out of it being like, dang, I have 14 cents in my bank account. My mom left me because I realized that I left my mom because I realized she's evil. And I'm kind of just like, Anyways, but the ninth house is about travel. It is about higher beliefs, your philosophy, and bigger systems. It's like religion as a concept is bigger than all of us, like capitalism, like socialism, like all of these different things, like they are very big systems, and we are all contributing into it in some way, shape, or form. And my point in bringing that up is I think that your interaction with it and establishing yourself and identifying with those parts of yourself will be very relevant with how Saturn in Aries will be for you. Because I noticed that when things move through the ninth house, it's very like you start praying, you start believing in different things, you start governing and operating from a different perspective on your life. So on one hand, especially with with Jupiter about to move into Leo this year, I think that it will be like a huge opportunity for you to experience new things. And next year at the beginning in January, we're going to also see a Mars retrograde in your second house. And I want to say that you'll start feeling the Mars retrograde in the second half of this year, because Mars will be in shadow by that point. And so I want to say, yes, this could be financial and it could be related to money, which is very, very true. And I'll get into that in a moment. But I want to say that the second house and also Jupiter in your first house, and then with, Saturn in your ninth house, experiences and seeing new things and trying new things will be very relevant in you deciding to, operate in your life a little bit differently. Like, I feel like a lot of you will go through something that really enlightens you or inspires you, or a lot of you might consume something or witness something that really inspires you and incentivizes you to do more in your life, And Jupiter rules your fifth house, so I would imagine like maybe for some of you this is related to your children. So if you do have kids, maybe they're traveling, maybe they're moving very far away, maybe they're going somewhere different, and maybe this is you having to, like pivot financially in order to accommodate them in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you're having kids that are going to school, going to college, and something like that. Maybe you're traveling with your kid. Maybe this could be something about like your in-laws. So maybe you're having like family members, marry in to your family, like you're having people marry into your family, people like going to weddings, going to events and stuff like that. Maybe some of you are dealing with like the court, getting a job at like a law firm, or something else. Maybe some of you are getting more involved with like churches and like monasteries, or like going somewhere in order to pray and preach and practice something else. I keep saying pray because I just think that that's like the easiest thing to say, but it can be a lot more abstract than that. It's just to practice and believe in something bigger than yourself, and to learn more and to reach above what you are normally used to. Like, think of it this way, you're born into a small town, you live there for a very long time, and you do travel and whatnot, but you always come back there, but it's much more different than like actually moving somewhere completely different, somewhere that you've never been before. And I think that a lot of you Leo risings, have no problem taking action in this regard of your life, because like Aries rules your ninth house. So it's like prior to this, like you have no issue, like if you're like, I want to go to this school, or I want to move across the country, like you will do it, and you will somehow find a way to make it happen. And dare I say, you're a little bit like independent in this area of your life because you don't care and you'll do what you want. But I also think that because Saturn's moving here, it will force you to get a lot more serious about it, and it will probably restrict you, because I noticed that a lot of Leo risings going into this transit are, wanting to travel or live somewhere else, or feeling very frustrated with the place that they live, especially because Saturn will be opposing your third house. So like, it kind of just seems like something about like a third house theme will be interfering with like something that you're trying to accomplish in your ninth house. So it's like, oh, I want to go to this school, but I can't because of where I live, or, like this could also be like third house makes me think of like language. So a lot of you could be getting a lot more serious about like language, the internet, and maybe even something about like you know, physical places. Like it makes me think of like, oh, like you own like an online business and you want to open up a physical shop, you know? So it's like something like that. I think that's very ninth house, because the ninth house can also deal with like property and, you know, like physical land. So I wouldn't be surprised if somehow some of you are integrating that into your life in some way, shape, or form, you know, being like, oh, like I'm tired of only being online, or like I want to open up an actual store. But again, it could also be about like your siblings and whatnot. So if you do have siblings, or if you do have immediate relatives like aunts and uncles that are important in your life, this might be a transit where you're kind of going back and forth with them and sort of having to change something about that part of your life. And because Saturn rules your sixth house, maybe it's somehow related to like service and health. I think that maybe a lot of you, excuse me, by the way, a lot of you will maybe be having to take care of a family member, or family member, like, you know, like immediate relative might have to be taking care of you as well. Especially since, you know, Mars rules your fourth house. So I think a lot of you might buy land, or a lot of you might buy a home, or, you know, get very serious about maintaining your home in some way, shape, or form. So maybe a lot of you are receiving money from your family. Maybe some of you will be receiving, like, especially because Saturn will be leaving your eighth house, so it's kind of like some kind of like gift will be happen to you, or like there will be something like, okay, like now this part of your life has a lot more structure to it. So I think that a lot of you will maybe be providing some sort of service to help others when it comes to like managing money, doing their taxes, you know, getting people together in that aspect of their life. So it's like you're very knowledgeable in this sense. And also because it's like Saturn was in your eighth house, which can deal with like the occult, like psychology and whatnot. Maybe something about this as well will be integrated moving forward in the next few years when it comes to, you know, providing services and helping others, because Saturn does rule your sixth house of service. And I also think that a lot of you could be finding jobs that are very far away. So a lot of you could, like I said, could be moving very far and, you know, traveling somewhere, and it could be for work. So it could be like business trips, commuting, or it could also just be that a lot of you are finding jobs in like colleges or like law firms. But aside from that, I also want to say that because Saturn rules your sixth house of like pets, animals, health, and well-being, day-to-day routines, this could be also something where, you know, your sixth house ruling the ninth house, a lot of you could be trying foreign concepts and beliefs and practices and customs in order to integrate more wellness into your life, especially because, you know, Aries is about the self in astrology. So it's like, I think that a lot of you will, you know, start to work out, or maybe a lot of you will try something new. Like it kind of makes me think of like, you know, like instead of like going to the gym lifting weights the American way, maybe you'll be doing something else from another country, like maybe like capoeira or something like that, you know, where you're trying like a foreign thing or like a cultural thing in order to help you, you know, learn new things and to be more conscious and be more holistic in your health approach. I also want to say that when I think about this, Saturn in the ninth house natally is like something, it makes me think of like Loki being afraid of God, or being afraid of like higher beliefs and ideals. So this might be an area of your life where you're feeling restricted, or maybe like religion is becoming oppressive in your life in some way, or like a belief system is like being restrictive with you, and it's kind of like holding back your freedom, or like this is giving you something to lose. So you're kind of having to kind of be like I want to do what I want to do and be impulsive and do what I want, but I don't know if I can right now because it kind of goes against what I believe, or it just doesn't feel right, you know. And it might be, you know, like related to your health and your well-being, you know. And the sixth house isn't that great, if I'm gonna be honest. So Saturn Loki do be crippling you at times. So I think that a lot of you will probably have to like travel in order to find good health, or, you know, maybe a lot of you are trying to move around in order to find a place that you can really settle down environmentally, and to find the people who can actually help you and do something good for you. I also want to say that a lot of you, random note, maybe running into people and like services of like people who are not from the same background as you. So like makes me think that like you go to the hospital and like say your background is like Hispanic or Black, and then your doctor is like, or like the nurses are like Indian, or, you know, from like another country, you know, and you're kind of having, you know, that's just something that will go on. So I think, and my point in saying that is, I think that a lot of you have a lot of interesting experiences of people whom you are not used to seeing on a day-to-day basis, and this will start to like also open up your mind a lot more. So something like that could be relevant as well. And the ninth house also just makes me think of like higher education beliefs. So like I said, this could be something where a lot of you are becoming more structured about this part of your life. And I also want to say that Neptune will be moving through your ninth house. So this low-key makes me think of like going somewhere you've never been before. So it's like maybe a lot of y'all are traveling to like the middle of the ocean, you know, maybe y'all going swimming or something like that. You know, I don't know how y'all get down. But Neptune can also be about, you know, like ninth house themes where it's like spirituality and belief. So this could also be adding a lot of delusion. So I would just say that going into this transit, be wary of buying into things and like, you know, believing in something. I think that a lot of you, Saturn really urges you to be a little bit more skeptical with what's around you and what's being sold to you, because a lot of you might fall into like a pitfall or some kind of like a trap. Not like in a bad way, but you know, it's like a lot of you might get blindsided by a specific belief and you won't realize that you're contributing to something that isn't actually all that helpful to you, and it might be starting to harm or like cause issues in like your financial situation. Or it might be that like your beliefs and philosophies revolving around money and how you integrate it into your life will be changed, especially if you are like emotionally spending, or if you're using money as a way to like scapegoat other, you know, more serious issues in your life. So it's like, you know, getting more realistic about it as well. And I think that will be a really nice thing for you, Leo, because I think that a lot of you have been craving more structure, more goals, and more feeling like, you know, there's something bigger ahead of you, and you maybe feel like you haven't been able to do that. And I think that this transit will help you, like, okay, like there's a bigger picture to be contributed to, like make sure you do something about it, you know, and only you can do something about it. How can you better yourself, and how can you gain the resources that you need in order to make something happen and to see the results that you want to see? And I think that it will be a very liberating experience, because you'll finally be able to stand behind something and be proud of something that you have done yourself, and something that you have put the blood, sweat, and tears into it, instead of constantly feeling like you're having to rely on other people in some way, shape, or form. Anyways, let's shuffle the cards. And this could all be related to your kids. Like if you have kids, I think that with Jupiter moving to your first house, a lot of you could have children or something, or like there could be just a lot of relevance of children. So like in-laws, taking care of them, babysitting, nannying, be careful if that's something that you don't want to deal with. Card for Leo. Yeah, for you, the Ace of Coins, girl, I know you're clapping right now. This is a really nice card. I think that a lot of you will find like a new business venture or a new investment in something with this transit, but you know, maybe like investing in like land or property or businesses, and you know, this will be like passive income in your life, and it will bring you money without you having to lift a finger. So a lot of you could be getting into investing, or like maybe like crypto or something like that, you know, opposing the third house, you know, incentivizing you to look more digitally. But I also feel like this will be about your self-worth, you know, believing in yourself, believing that you can make things happen for yourself, and operating from a place of confidence, not a place of arrogance. That part. Anyways, that's all I have for you, Leo. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the horoscope resonated, and if it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye. I love you. So now we're at Virgo rising. So hello, Virgo rising. If you're seeing this, this will be your horoscope for Saturn and Aries. And Saturn will be in Aries from February 14th, 2026 up until about April of 2028. I think around that threshold is when Saturn will start ping-ponging between Taurus and Aries. But I want to say that there has been a lot of misconceptions or a lot of talk about Saturn and Aries for you specifically, since Saturn is about to go into your 8th house. Let's just be real, and I think you already know this. Saturn in the 8th is not cute. I know people who have Saturn in the 8th natally, and I see it terrorize them on a daily basis, and I see how frustrated it makes them and how in debt they constantly feel to different areas of their life. However, it's a little bit different for you because you already have Aries over your 8th house. So it's like I think that this will be nice for you. You know, Saturn rules your 5th house, so Saturn kind of does good things for you and it helps you. And so because of that, and because your 2nd house is so pretty with Libra ruling over it, it kind of just makes me think that a lot of you all will be wanting to establish independence in some way, shape, or form. You know, it makes me think of like, man, I'm tired of, you know, my boo thing paying all the bills. You know, like I want to pay my bills on my own and I want to move out and be independent. You know, I'm tired of being in this situation where my money is always another person's money, or another person's money is always my money, you know? And it's like, it doesn't have to be that exact manifestation. I just think that a lot of you will get a lot more serious about the way that you're using money in your life. And like that is just like the part of it that, you know, like you're an Earth rising, so of course you're concerned about the financial aspect of this, because Saturn will be opposing your 2nd house. So it definitely leaves me to believe that there will be something going on here when it comes to your money versus another person's money. So like I'm just gonna be upfront. I think that throughout the next few years, a lot of you could be doing a lot of big money moves when it comes to like, you know, buying a car, buying a home, getting serious about property. And because Saturn rules your 5th house, this could also be about children. This could be about your kids. This could be about, you know, like financial investment into them, especially if, you know, like there's something going on of like child support in your life. And I also want to say that if it will be financially related, but it could also be something, excuse me, about your, what was I going to say? It could be about your immune system, because the 8th house, I honestly see it as like something about, because I also noticed that Saturn and 8th house natives, they have something going on with their organs. And for you, you know, it could be like your reproductive organs, it could be your hormones, it could be, you know, like your, like something about like autoimmune stuff. So like take care of your immune system throughout this transit. And especially because we're also going to have Mars retrograde in your first house next year in January. So in 2027, Mars will be retrograding in January, and you'll probably start to feel it in the second half of 2026 because Mars won't be in shadow by that point. And so in your first house, you know, Mars likes to detox, Mars likes to clean things up, Mars will create conflict, Mars can hurt you. So I would say that a lot of you will probably get like, you know, if you're wanting to lose weight, or if you're wanting to get more muscular, or if you're wanting to just be more athletic and more movement oriented, or these things might be solutions to health issues that you are dealing with. But I also think that a lot of you could be using movement in your body as a ways to cope with very strong emotions that are coming up to the surface. So honestly, or excuse me, not Aries, Virgo, be careful of self-destructive tendencies. Be careful of being aggressive with others, because I think that a lot of you Virgo risings low-key do have like, you have like a well-defined sense of self, and you know exactly who you are deep down, and you kind of just hide it, or you kind of just not show it to people. Or a lot of you have a lot of pent-up anger and frustration that you don't really show to others, and you kind of translate it into other areas of your life, and it might start to take a toll on your body. And I think that for a lot of you, this might be an opportunity for you to start expressing that more, especially since Saturn rules your 5th house of self-expression. So a lot of you could be learning how to express anger, frustration, or to even just express your identity, who you are, a lot more. But it's really important to not take that out on people, or take that out on, you know, other things like your financial situation. You know, it makes me think of like running up them credit cards. It makes me think of, you know, being risky. It makes me think of, you know, like being promiscuous, hooking up with people and whatnot. And I'm not saying that, you know, all of you do that. You know, it could even be like gambling, you know, just doing risky behaviors. I just think that things like this might, you know, if you're already dealing with it, or if you have dabbled into it, I could see it becoming an issue later on in Saturn and Aries, you know. And I'm not saying like this is what you're all going to be dealing with, but like a good portion of you, I feel like that will be a very, very strong and prominent theme for you, you know. And especially because if it starts taking a toll on your body and your well-being. For others of you, this could also be about your children. You know, if you have kids, I think that a lot of your energy will be dedicated towards your kids, you know, especially like money, like paying for them, like taking care of their college, taking care of their bills, taking care of something else for them. Mars also rules your 3rd house, so it could be like you're buying them cars, you're buying them new phones, gadgets, all these things that they might need. Maybe some of you are getting into like crypto and like digital banking, or maybe there's something going on here where you're pulling out of those things for whatever reason. But it could also be that this could be something about like inheritances. You know, let's be real, the 8th house also rules, you know, like death. So there could be things going on in your family where there is like a major change because some family member passed away, and maybe this is you, you know, organizing inheritances and money, especially with your siblings. And I just want to say, if you are a Virgo rising and you do have siblings, this transit, like up until like the middle of next year, like you need to keep an eye out for your relationship with them, because if it is not that great right now, it will probably get a little bit worse in some way. Or, you know, especially as it relates to your children and your happiness and your self-expression, or your romantic partners, you know. Like this doesn't even have to be, because Saturn just moved through your 7th house, so this doesn't even have to be your family. This could be like your partner's family or someone else's family. And like, I'm not saying this in a way to like scare you or, you know, like fear monger. I think that if anything is relevant in what I've said, I think that you already see what's going on and you already know what's coming. You know, Saturn's a slower moving planet, so we're more able to see things coming from far away, but they're just bigger obstacles to overcome. So like, if any of the things I have mentioned are relevant to you, I really want you to be very calculated and to really find other ways to express this frustration and to communicate a little bit more eloquently and a little bit more concisely. You know, your 3rd house ruler retrograding in your 1st house definitely shows like a lot of stuff of like consultations, finding lawyers, finding, you know, people to file with your taxes and your insurance, you know, finding the right salesperson, you know. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of you might deal with con artists. You might deal with people who are trying to scam you. You might deal with people who are trying to take your money or trying to take something away from you, you know? And it's like, you know, Saturn will be opposing your second house. Your second house is ruled by Libra. So that's Libra is relationships and connections and documents and signatures. And, you know, like it makes me think of like prenups. It makes me think of, you know, filing stuff. So I just want to say be careful in this area of your life, because I think that because Saturn in the eighth, like Saturn restricts in the eighth house is like, you know, reliant on other people. You might find that if you have been financially independent, this is you having to rely on another person or some kind of system in order to help you with money, or vice versa, where like you have been independent, you have been dependent on somebody, and this is like an opportunity for you to be more independent. And I want to say that Aries wants to do these things. Like Aries wants to take these first steps and do it by itself anyways. So a lot of these things might transpire because you're deciding to do something on your own. And I do think that when you come out of this transit, you'll be a lot more wise, and you'll be a lot more educated on like legal affairs and how to manage money a little bit better, and to, you know, operate off of it. And I'm not saying that you don't know how to manage your money, Virgo. If anyone knows how to take care of stuff, it is you. I'm just saying that a lot of you will add a new layer to it and be able to bank another area of your life a lot more differently. And if that's not the case, I also think that this is a lot of healing for your inner child, especially, you know, because I feel like Virgo, a lot of you grew up having very difficult childhoods, or feeling like, you know, your childhood was like very like tumultuous, or it was missing something, or there was just like a lot of traveling and moving around and never being able to sort of settle down and, you know, be yourself and really get to sit with who you are so that you can intimately understand yourself. I think that was Saturn ruling your fifth house and, you know, going to your eighth house. A lot of you will probably like settle down in some way or decide to get comfortable. And, you know, especially with your fourth house ruler Jupiter moving into Leo in the second half of this year, and, you know, Jupiter is going to move into your 12th house. 12th house is foreign lands. Your fourth house ruler in the 12th house of foreign lands. A lot of you might be moving away from somebody like really, really far. You know, you're like, oh, I live in Massachusetts, so I'm just gonna move to London, you know, something like that, where you're starting over, you're moving somewhere where you've never been before, or your living situation or something about your family is just dramatically changing, and it will force you to be a little bit more independent in some way, whether it be managing your own money or regulating yourself a little bit more instead of being around people who you can go back and forth with, you know what I'm saying? So I think that these will all be really nice things for you, and I think that they will bring a lot more autonomy into your life, and you'll be able to integrate, you know, the services that you provide for others to yourself, and a lot of you will probably feel a lot more independent because of it. And I also think that because Jupiter will be moving into your 12th house, a lot of you could be treating your home as like a sanctuary or a place of like relief and getting away from things. So I definitely think that in the next few years it will be really, really important. Like if you want to get through this transit and you want to feel like comfortable or like you're worried about it, start with your home, start with your family, start looking for people who you feel the most comfortable with. Use the rest of Jupiter in Cancer to find your tribe, to find people who you can call a home, to people who will be there for you and emotionally supportive of you. You know, something that you can protect, something that you can care about, something that is very important to you, and something that, you know, whether it be a belief system or an idea, or whether it be a physical place, whether it be a friend, you know, I think that finding somewhere that you can foster yourself and take care of it and feel like you're comfortable, it will be like a really nice way for you to get through this transit, because you will have a place that you can retreat to in order to go through these silent transformations and to shed all that frustration and anger that may be coming off of you. And if that's not the case, it will just be a place where you can really cocoon and go through those transformations quietly so that you can become the best possible version of yourself. Anyways, that was the best way that I can put it. So I'm gonna start shuffling the cards now. And especially with Neptune in the mix, like Neptune rules your 7th house, so it's like how this relates to your interpersonal connections and your relationships, you know? So like there might be a little bit of delusion. Be careful of partners that are selling you things, love bombing you, being confusing, you know? Like if your partner's like, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, you know, like just sign the contract, don't do it. You know, like some of y'all Virgos, y'all be a little bit too altruistic and a little bit too believing of people that you care about. Like it is a great thing that you decide to give yourself up and decide to do connection so seriously. That's why I love y'all. However, simultaneously, this transit will teach you like, hey, like sometimes people who love you the most are truly out to get you, and you really don't need to deal with that delusion and that confusion. Also, take care of like fluids. Drink plenty of water throughout this transit, and a lot of you could also be going through a lot of changes with like swimming and like hydrotherapy, or like water, and like something about water can be very important in terms of like your emotional regulation system and like, you know, your bodily fluids. But your bodily fluids can also tell you a lot about how your health is going throughout this transit. I wanted to say one more thing. Neptune also rules like spirituality and like magic, so a lot of you could be going through like a big transformation in that area of your life as well. I'm sorry, I'm like trying to think of, I just had it and I completely forgot. I think that a lot of you will also go through like major changes like your love life. So anyway, that's all I can remember. If I remember, I'll try to put it in. I'll try to like cut it in. So if there's like, I'll put it in timestamp like Virgo part 2. I don't know if I remember. Ooh, who else got this card? You have the Star. I think that this is a really pretty card. I think that a lot of you will definitely go through a lot of healing. This card's associated with Aquarius, which is your 6th house. So it's like helping others, people helping you, you know, finally someone coming in to assist you, people, you know, looking for people who can help you instead of looking for people who you can help them, you know. But overall, the Star is about healing. It is about hope. It is about seeing a destiny. It is about seeing a point. You know, it's like mindlessly following something just because it is so magical and it is something that is worth, you know, excuse me, oh my gosh, achieving. But overall, I think that this will be a transit for you that leaves you feeling very refreshed and feeling like you have a new skin on you, maybe both literally and metaphorically. So really embrace this transit, Virgo. There's really no need to be scared of it because I think that it will be like the ultimate way to become the best possible version of yourself and to bring improvement into your life. And yeah, I know a lot of you want to improve things around you, but doing so when you're at the best possible state of mind will be the best way to do it. So anyways, that's all I have for you, Virgo. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the horoscope resonated, and if it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye. So now we're at Libra rising. So hello, Libra rising. If you're seeing this, this will be a horoscope for Saturn and Aries. Saturn will be in Aries from February 14, 2026 up until April 2028. It will be around that threshold when it starts kind of like moving back and forth between like Aries and Taurus. And I got a little snarky look on my face because I have Saturn in the 7th house natally. And I'm like, you know what, you Libra, y'all don't even know what's about to hit you. I'm so real with you all right now. I'm speaking from experience. Like, you cannot argue with me right now. You're about to be like, just don't even comment. Like, I see you like with the keyboard up right now. Don't, just stop. Just go ahead, press the backspace and sit down. So anyways, the reason I think that Saturn in your 7th house will actually be a really, really nice thing for you because Saturn rules your 4th house. And I honestly get the vibe that for a lot of Libra risings, their relationships have been a major sore spot for you, for all of you, because I've just noticed that there are 2 distinct categories of Libra risings right now. The one where you have just, it's like a Venn diagram, like the one where you have not been in a relationship in years, in a very long time, and then the one that has been in a relationship for literally like 10 years now, and then that little middle part where you're wanting a relationship and you're just like not getting it, you know, like it's just not there and you're just kind of like struggling, kind of like floating by, or you're like struggling with like an ex. But the point is that I think that a lot of you Libra risings really need this transit, and not like in a rude, patronizing way, but like more so in a way that's like, I think it will help you bring a lot more structure into your interpersonal connections. And I'm trying to think what your, and especially with Jupiter moving into your 11th house later on this year, which by the way will be a beautiful transit. You know, Jupiter in your 11th house trining Saturn in your 7th. Saturn does not mind being in the 7th house, and Jupiter, you know, in the 11th house is just TAF. So I think that in the second half of this year and honestly like the beginning of next year, there will probably be a lot of opportunities to connect with some really good people, or there will be just like a lot of karmic undoings in your interpersonal connections that will help you get a step forward in your life in some way, shape, or form, and to achieve some sort of goal that you've been wanting. You know, and I think that because Saturn rules your 4th house, a lot of you could be buying a home under this transit, or a lot of you could be moving in with a partner or moving out away from a partner. And I also think that this, for a lot of you, could be in signing important documents and files. So it's like a lot of you could be, you know, getting divorced, getting married, and maybe buying a home with somebody, or, you know, like something of that nature. Obviously, you need to take into account your partner's chart too in order to see what's going on, you know? But I think that overall, a lot of Libra risings will just get more serious about Saturn, about your interpersonal connections and your relationships. I also want to say that the 7th house can be about like business. So a lot of you could be you know, toning it down with like business and whatnot. And since Saturn rules your fourth house, like maybe some of you are buying property or investing in land or something for like a work or business situation. So this might be like very important for you as well. And I also want to say that Saturn is opposing your first house. So it's opposing your ascendant. So it might just kind of feel like other people, you know, Saturn restricts. So you might notice that like it's a little bit weird because Aries is very young and Saturn's very old. And then Saturn rules your fourth house. So it's like maybe older family members will be particularly dogmatic or restricting with you, or you may be going back and forth with people who seem one way but are a completely different way. So it makes me think of like, oh, like you're with someone older but they act very immature for their age, or you're with someone who is younger but they act very mature for their age. So that might be a relevant dynamic because I've noticed that a lot of Libra risings do deal with like age gaps in their interpersonal connections, like no cap. So that could be important for some of you, like a note. But I also wanted to say that this transit seems a little bit more abstract because at the beginning of next year, we're going to see Mars retrograde in Virgo. You're going to start feeling it in the second half of this year because Mars is going to enter a shadow period by that point, and then it will actually station retrograde next year in January. So 2027. And in Virgo, it will be in your 12th house, which is terrible. Can I just be real? Like that is horrible. If I were you, I would not be looking for that. But I also think that it will be cleansing. It will be very nice because Mars is likes to detox. It likes to clean things up and it likes to get rid of things. Mars also rules conflict. And so there might be a tendency to self-isolate throughout this transit or to be very self-destructive. So I encourage you, Libra, if you are going to be like, if you anticipate like going through something difficult or like something like emotionally tumultuous, don't isolate yourself, okay? Like I think that you have a tendency to criticize yourself when you're by yourself, or there's a tendency to, you know, pull away from the world and to just start blaming everything on yourself and to criticize yourself to the extreme. And I'm saying this because Saturn is opposing your ascendant, what might start happening is you may start to attract partners who are controlling, aggressive, criticizing, or, you know, distant, or, you know, like just like very selfish. And then you might start to project like this attitude of like self-criticism onto the people around you, and this dynamic is not healthy. It blocks intimacy, it crutches other unhealthy emotions, and it will just bring in a bunch of other things, you know, especially if it is adopted or somehow in some way, shape, or form relevant to your family members. And I just think that this is like, it will probably start with friends. I think that this will be an opportunity where like the solace and the light will come from hanging around people, adopting on dreams and ideas that you want to pursue and things that you look forward to. And then I think that you will probably find love or connection in a social circle or through meeting people through mutuals or through, you know, doing things that you love. So connections will be built on mutuality as opposed to lust, aggression, or excitement. And for those of you that are taking it to the next step in a relationship, I just think that your families and your, you know, oh, sorry. Okay, it's like kind of messing up. Hold on. Sorry. Anyways, I think that your families and your home situation will be very relevant, like a partner. Like I said, like if you are in a relationship, I think that this will just be like, you know, taking on the next step in some way, shape, or form when it comes to, you know, like families. I think that because Saturn will be sextiling, will it be? Because it will be sextiling Pluto in your fifth house, maybe some of you will decide to take it to the next step with the partner by having children with them, or, you know, like having fun with them, you know, traveling with them, doing things that you want to do, or in some way adopting self-expression in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of you could also be dealing with like, you know, like maybe like if you are single, like this is you going out and wanting to do things just to like party hardy and do things that you've always wanted to do but weren't able to because you were, you know, in such a long-term relationship. So it's like going to the club or partying and, you know, going to events and whatnot and doing the stuff that you want to do. It could be that you're doing stuff with a partner as well, like really fun things like going to parties, going to raves. That's just what people my age are doing. But for others of you, it could definitely be a little bit more different than that. You know, maybe you're like, oh, let's go do like a pottery making class, or oh, you know, like let's go to this concert, or let's go to this, you know. And a lot of you could be trying to invite more fun and self-expression into your life in transforming it. So maybe a lot of you are seeing transformation in things that you love because you are doing things that a partner likes, you know. I also think that because Mars also does govern your second house, maybe there's also something going on here with like your self-worth and your sense of duty and depth, like DEBT. And so maybe this is like something that you're organizing instead of constantly feeling in debt to partners or feeling secure when partners are in debt to you. Or, you know, maybe there is just a lot of passion and aggression when it comes to interacting with other people. And this will be something that you're learning to temper and simmer down so that you can invite more meaningful connection into your life. But overall, I think that's really the best way to say it. I felt like I could have just said like, oh, Saturn in your 7th house will just incentivize you to look for relationships and to be a little bit more serious about connections, whether it be taking a break to work on yourself and do the things that you want to do and incorporating something new into your life, or whether it be finally deciding to throw in the towel in some aspect of your life so that you can focus on a relationship with another person so that you can feel more connected to them, or you can take it to the next level, especially if that's something that you've been wanting to do. But it might be that it's somehow related to your home, your family, your past, and your attachments, especially if you are stuck on an ex or if you are feeling haunted by emotions of the past in some way, shape, or form. And I think that as this year progresses, you'll notice that it gets aired out more and more and more, especially because Mars, you know, will be in your 12th house. So it's like the planet of conflict, detox, and aggression in your 12th house of isolation, of, you know, healing, of spirituality, and of mental health and intuition. This will be like, you know, how do these things blend and how will they manifest in your interpersonal relationships and when you interact with other people, especially if you are in some sort of dynamic where you're feeling isolated or you're feeling alone and you start to pull away to criticize yourself. But overall, I think the best thing that I have to say for you, Libra, is I think that a lot of you are being a little bit too hard on yourselves, and it's causing you to prevent, you know, meaningful change in your life. And I think that this transit will bring you people, or it will bring you situations that will allow you to establish some sort of independence, or it will allow people to come in and actually help you if you want them to. I think that a lot of you will have a run-in with somebody who is very important these next 2 years that will like dramatically change your perspective on something. I don't think that they'll be temporary by any means, because, you know, the 12th house is the house of ending. So I honestly see you going through like a huge falling outage with someone in your life in the next 3 years, but someone that really needs to be removed from your life. So take that for what it is. This could also be related to your health and your well-being. I especially think that with Saturn moving out of your 6th house and then Mars going to retrograde in your 12th house, a lot of you will probably get more serious about like your mental health, your emotions, and how this relates to boundary setting and being more independent in your connections, you know, especially if you do feel like you're very codependent, or if you feel like you attract people who are very codependent. So some kind of a line will be drawn in. It will be very helpful for you to be able to help others from afar, or to feel like you have a little bit more mental capacity. Anyways, let's shuffle your cards and see what goes on. I also want to say that with Neptune moving into your 7th house as well, Neptune rules your 6th house of like work and routine and service. So, you know, Neptune's very delusional, so work, routine, service might be very delusional, and it might be like adding a fog, you know, like, are you paying attention to work and family a little bit more, or like your obligations as a means to distract yourself from your interpersonal connections? Are you dealing with deceptive partners who are always absent because they're always taking care of work and you think that's normal and they're like not paying enough attention to you, you know? It's like, how is work and stability and wellness being incorporated into your interpersonal connections? I think that this is also like a really great opportunity for you to like go to a yoga class with a partner, or like ayahuasca or something. And if that not be the case, I also think that work situations may brew some sort of like romance or something. So be careful if that's not what you're looking for. For you have 8 of Wands. I definitely get the vibe that this will be about impatience or having to do things very quickly. News will be brought to you very quickly. I feel like Saturn and Aries is going to be like in your face. Like when you're seeing, like when I'm uploading this, like you'll probably already be feeling it, and it will probably be like, okay, like it's go time, you know? So I think that will be the kind of vibe where when you enter Saturn and Aries and when you come out of it, you might feel like 10 years of your life that you feel like nothing happened will suddenly just speed up and move along in Saturn Aries. So like these next 3 years, I get the vibe that a lot will get done, you know, a lot more than you were expecting, and you'll come out a completely different person in a completely different situation. Anyways, that's all I have for you, Libra. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck. Take it from me. It's not that bad. It's really not that bad. It gets annoying, but it's low-key not that bad. Anyways, I hope the horoscope resonated, and if it did, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll hope to see you in my next video. Bye. I love you. Okay, so now we're at Scorpio. Had to turn on the light. It's getting dark out now. But if you're seeing this, this will be, or hello, Scorpio. Hi. This will be your horoscope for Saturn in Aries, and Saturn will be in Aries from February 14, 2026 until about April of 2028. That will probably be the point where Saturn starts like, doing its thing and starts moving in and out. But for you, Saturn will be moving through your 6th house. And can I just say, as a Scorpio myself, I think that this will be a very literal transit. I just think that because Saturn will be moving through your 6th house, it's really like the best way to say it. I think that a lot of you will be very focused on your health, wellness, your diet, your routine. Aries is about movement, so a lot of you could be going to the gym, and because Neptune's involved, maybe there's like a little bit of like an idealistic energy to this, where it's like maybe some of you are like, oh, like if I go to the gym or if I do this, then this will happen, or like I'll be okay. But I think that Saturn moving into your 6th house will definitely be like, okay, like no, like it's time to do something about this and take care. I also want to say that Aries can be about injuries, so maybe some of you will be recovering from sort of like trauma or like injury to your body, especially because Mars will be, Mars is the ruler of your 6th house as well as your traditional chart ruler. Mars will be retrograding as well in Virgo in January 2027, but you'll start to feel it in 2026 because Mars will station it will station in shadow in the second half of this year, and then it will actually station retrograde next January. And it will be in Virgo, which is your 11th house. So that's a pretty interesting combination if you ask me, because I think that a lot of you will find a lot of opportunities. I think that because your 6th house ruler is retrograding in your 11th house, which is a pretty interesting thing to say, like who we talking about that? But I definitely think that it will be something about services and providing to like communities or like groups of people and like friends, or a lot of you could be looking for friends, or a lot of you could just be looking for people who can assist you. So it kind of makes me think like, oh, like I really need to find like a massage therapist, and one of your friends is like, oh, like I know a person. So I think that opportunities and ways to be around people, you must take initiative because Mars is all about that. But I also think that because it's your 6th house ruler, like, services and work and jobs will be found through social networks and other people in some way, shape, or form. I also think that a lot of you could be realizing something about your future, or kind of going back to the drawing board when it comes to your future and when it comes to your health. It's like opportunities and things that you would want being stifled or somehow being conflicted by like your health or wellness. So it's like, oh, like I really want to travel across the country and do this, but I can't do that because of my health and my well-being, so like I really need to take care of that. So, or it might be that a lot of you are taking more into consideration your well-being in order before you decide to take it some sort of in like an opportunity like that. So that could be a situation for you. I also want to say that with Neptune being in the 6th house, Neptune rules your 5th house, which is actually pretty nice. Neptune moving out of your 5th house will definitely be really nice too, especially if you have been dealing with like deception or like confusion when it comes to your children, when it comes to your dating life. So like cheaters, liars, manipulators, people being irritating and very like head up in the clouds, overly religious, delusional, and confusing. If those have been traits that you've been dealing with like partners and children, I think that will definitely be coming to a stop now. And I think that with Neptune moving into Aries in the 6th house, first of all, work situations might become like a little bit hostile or a little bit irritating. Like, can we just be real here? I think that a lot of you will incorporate a lot more discipline into your day-to-day life and how you govern yourself. But I also think that it will bring in some sort of like conflict, especially if you make friends, or like there's like a lot of networking and a lot of parties going on because of like a work situation. So I just want to say that take care of this aspect of your life. But yeah, overall, I just feel like health is like a huge facet of this transit for you. And with Mars retrograding in the 11th house, I think that it will somehow be related to your social networks and your dreams and your goals. So it's like, and then Saturn will be opposing your 12th house, which is kind of difficult. Can I be honest? Like a lot of you might start to like, become hyper independent, or decide to pull away from people and decide to start doing things yourself in some way. The 12th house is about being alone. And it might kind of just cause a lot of conflict. I think that you'll come out of it a lot smarter or a lot more intelligent, because Mars moving in like Saturn, Aries, sixth house, it's like makes me think like, oh, like I'm just gonna do it myself, you know? I'm just going to, and Saturn rules your third house. So like low-key, it makes me think like I'm gonna learn how to do my own oil change. I'm gonna learn how to fix my own computer. I'm gonna learn how to build my own PC. I'm gonna learn how to fix stuff around the house. You know, like I think that a lot of you will start to take a hands-on approach when it comes to fixing things, or it might be that a lot of you are booking a lot of these services in order to get them done, you know? So it's like maybe you're trying to hire a contractor and a mechanic, or you know, somebody to look for who can help you with things. But I think that Aries just really wants to be independent, so I think that a lot of you will start to want to do things yourself, you know, whether it comes to like handiwork or whether it comes to like learning something new. You know, Saturn rules your third house, so in the sixth house it makes me think like learning a new service, you know? So it's like, man, I don't want to keep spending like $100 on a set of nails, or like more, like especially if you live in places like LA, they be paying like $700 for a set of nails. So it's like, I'm done paying that much money. Like I'm just gonna learn how to do them myself, buy all the supplies, you know, it's so expensive, I don't get why. So a lot of stuff like that, where a lot of you might be like, man, I'm tired of spending all this money on these services, I want to take care of it myself, you know? And I also think that maybe you'll be providing some sort of service or like opening up a business because of that. But that seems a little bit more. Actually, no, I could see it because Jupiter will also be moving into your 10th house this year. I think you're going to have a really good year, Scorpio. I just think that a lot of you will be really busy and you'll have to like hire people or get people to help you in some way, or a lot of you may have to like quit a job or something. It kind of makes me, you know, when people start like a YouTube career and then they like just get like really famous and they start making a bunch of money, and then they have to like quit their day job to like, you know, like they have to pick between one, like, do I want to keep my boring AF 9 to 5 job, or do I want to keep my like really unstable, like, you know, like new social job, you know, something like that, you know, where you might kind of just feel like you're having to make like some sort of decision when it comes to your day-to-day routine, because you're realizing that only one or the other can be feasible in managing your life. Or it might be that you're trying to keep multiple facets of your life, but it will just require a lot more careful planning. And you know, especially because Saturn will be opposing your 12th house, maybe at times you'll be feeling like you're very alone in the process, or you're kind of having to do everything by yourself. And this will be you like hiring people, like a manager or somebody who can take care of things, respond to emails for you and whatnot. Maybe this is you like launching a website, maybe going more digital when it comes to, you know, your work and your services. Or it might be that a lot of you are looking for something a little bit more local. I definitely think that Jupiter moving through your 9th house right now. Also, I think that a lot of you are absorbing a lot of information at the moment, and Jupiter rules your 2nd house. So a lot of you could be investing money into education at this moment, or a lot of you could be reading a lot, consuming a lot of knowledge, traveling. All of these things could be bringing you some sort of like semblance of like self-worth and confidence. And I think that it will all be very applicable whenever Jupiter moves into your 10th house in the summer, and it will be a chance for you to integrate all that you've learned in your experiences. A lot of you could go on to be like a mentor or something, or like make money off of like sharing your experiences of other people, teaching them or something. And maybe this will be through like online seminars, or like opening up some sort of like a website in order to, you know, provide for people. And for those of you who aren't really interested in like the business aspect of this transit, I also think that this will just be like using technology or consulting the right people to help you in order to incorporate more wellness into your life, you know? So maybe some of you are trying to get with like a personal trainer, maybe some of you are actually trying to go to the doctor, like a dentist, orthodontist, optometrist or something. Especially maybe if you haven't gone in a very long time, like these will be services that you'll be regularly booking more, so that you can keep in touch with your body a little bit more. And I want to say that like Aries causes conflict, and Mars will be retrograde in Virgo, which is the sign of service and health. So a lot of you might be literally getting into it with like, you know, healthcare workers, or like trying to look for the right people who can help you with something. And you know, Virgo will be in like, that's your 11th house. So it could be that a lot of you are getting very serious about like what you're contributing to like social circles, or like it might be that you're looking for people in like a community or something like that. I also want to say that because Neptune's in the mix, it might add a little bit of like confusion. Maybe some of you are looking for something more holistic in terms of like health and wellness. Or I also noticed that a lot of Scorpio placements were getting more serious about like swimming or like water. So a lot of you could be joining like low-key, maybe like an Olympic sport, or like maybe some of you are trying to, you know, like swim for wellness and something. Because I know like another Scorpio person that I met before, like she was using like swimming as a means to like lose a bunch of weight, and you know, like she joined like a swimming group, like a synchronized swimming group, which was so literal, you know, like that is like what that's giving you. Like I just cannot imagine what all of you will go through, but like that, just take that as a sign, you know, like group water activities, you know, like some of you might go on like a cruise, and maybe some of you will be booking some sort of like a service like that, or like, you know, getting, maybe you'll be working on something like that. And because Saturn will be opposing your 12th house of like foreign lands, and maybe some of you will find, you know, work in foreign lands, or maybe some of you will be looking for work in places that you've never been before, or maybe foreign lands and places that you've never been will be a factor in how you decide to choose work and like where your clients are coming from. So a lot of you might find work in a place that you've never been for. You're like, well, I'm based in Canada, but then I found a job in like Dubai. Like, what am I gonna do? You know, like, so am I gonna move over there and like start anew? And especially with Saturn ruling your third house and then Jupiter finishing up in your ninth house by that point, it might be that like you've learned a new language, or you've learned the ropes of a new society or a new country or something in order to get with it, you know? I just think that a lot of Scorpio placements have probably been thinking about moving long distance, or you have been, you know, incorporating more belief systems. And maybe a lot of you have also been dealing with like family members moving far away by this point. So like maybe like something about like in-laws on your mother's side of the family, or maybe there may be news of pregnancy and children coming in from family members. And I especially think that with Jupiter moving into your 10th house and opposing your 4th house, a lot of you might be dealing with like a lot of personal stuff this year, where it's like your career is blowing up, but then you're kind of having to like, you know, accommodate your personal life to make sure that like your routines and your day-to-day structures are kind of staying together. You know, it makes me think of like being so busy with your career and your work that you're not really able to spend time by yourself and do the things that you want to do when you're by yourself, you know, taking care of business, being home, relaxing, chillaxing, doing the weird little hobbies that you like doing, or being with friends that you really care about. So I think that with this with Saturn in Aries, it will bring a lot of structure to your health and your wellness, and a lot of you will get more serious about moving your body and cleansing your body and honoring your body. I just think that in the later degrees of this transit, you'll start to realize that like you're picking up a little bit more responsibilities than you can handle, and take care to not bite off more than you can chew, and make plenty of time for rest. Okay, let's get into it. Mars also likes a detox, and it sometimes causes conflict, so I would be wary of getting into drama with like friend groups and stuff like that. So that doesn't have to be relevant, but some of you might deal with that, so take that for what it is. Card for Scorpio. Oh, for you, we have the Fool. I definitely feel like Scorpios have been entering a lot of new phases in their life recently, and it's a lot of new energy. And it's like you're coming out of like a dark night of the soul in some way to invite something new, you know? This is very like Little Mermaid. So, you know, like being held back by who you are and wanting to be somewhere new, you know? And I get the feeling like, you know, you Scorpio rising, going through transformation to invite something new, you know, being somewhere that you've never been before, and maybe you feel like you stick out like a sore thumb, you know? So it's like, obviously, if you are one identity and background, then you move to a completely different country, you might feel like a little bit out of place, or you might kind of feel like you're in new territory. And this could be more abstract, you know, maybe you're very young or very old, and you're going into a career field where people are very different ages and stuff like from you, you know? So it's like, but my point is that there will be, you know, an emphasis on new adventures and stepping into territory that you've never been before, simply because you want to be a part of it. Anyways, that's all I have for you, Scorpio. Thank you so much for watching. I definitely think that a lot of you will achieve like a dream career, dream job this year. But I hope the horoscope resonated. And if it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye. I love you. Okay, so now we're at Capricorn rising. So hello, Capricorn rising. If you're seeing this, this would be your horoscope for Saturn in Aries. Saturn will be in Aries from February 14th, 2026 until about April, like spring of 2028. At that point, you'll probably start moving back and forth between like Aries and Taurus. Sorry if I'm like burping. I just ate a granola bar and drank some water because I was just not gonna make it if I just didn't do that. So anyways, for you, Saturn will be moving through your 4th house, and let me tell you, as someone who is finishing up Saturn in their 4th house, I do not like it. I think maybe for you, you'll have a better time dealing with it because Saturn is your chart ruler. So this is like really important stuff, you know. This is really important. But I did not like Saturn in the 4th house. I did like it because, truth be told, and I'm speaking from experience, by the way, it feels really nice to come out of it because I feel like I have a rich personal life, and this does allow you to comb through a lot of family stuff, which is definitely going to be the theme of this. And I was actually ruminating about this a little bit while I was eating this granola bar, because Saturn's moving into your 4th house, right? Saturn's your chart ruler. So wherever Saturn is where you're going. So Saturn's in the 4th house. Saturn's been in the 3rd house, where you have been focused on siblings, immediate relatives, your neighborhood, your work, your car, and transportation, language, learning, communication, and also addressing any issues of like addiction and like, becoming sober and finding new ways to heal and cope and learn language and, like communicate what's going on with your body. Whereas in the 4th house, this will be something about the past, something about your emotional attachments, your roots. And because we're also going to have that Mars retrograde at the beginning of next year in Virgo, you'll start to feel it in the second half of this year, because Mars will station shadow in the fall around that point, and it will move into Virgo in January around that point, and then actually station retrograde. So January 2027 is when this will happen. And this will be in your 9th house. And it made me think like, oh, having to live with an in-law or moving in with family members, it makes me think maybe, after Jupiter in Cancer, you're getting into a relationship, and then this is you moving in with them, and this is maybe you living with other people and living with family members whom you've never lived with before. So it's kind of like having to relearn customs or relearn things that you have been taught as a child. Or for some of you, this might be like, moving back in with family because you have to go to school, or maybe this is you moving back into family so that you can just have a home base and not pay as much money to rent and then travel the world, So a lot of you could definitely getting a little bit more serious about moving about and whatnot. And I especially think that with Jupiter moving into your 8th house in the this summer, there could be a lot of increase in like finances and money. And Jupiter rules your 12th house, so I definitely think that it could either be like money, but it could also be like, the 8th house is about like investments and debt. So a lot of you could be going and transformation. So a lot of you could be going through transformation and like using money and like, using credit cards and whatnot to go to places that you've never been before. So it's like traveling, being places, learning something new, kind of being in like monk mode where you're deciding to be by yourself a little bit more, especially Aries 4th house. And I just noticed that for a lot of Cap risings, because Aries rules your 4th house, a lot of your childhoods are very tumultuous. Like I keep saying tumultuous throughout this video, but very like aggressive, like you were taught to keep moving it on, no one cares, you move forward, put one foot in front of the other, there's no time to feel, there's no time to take care of stuff. And every time something goes down in that house, your name is always the first one yelled. So it's like growing up and like, you're hardwired to be independent, you're hardwired to take care of business and to keep fighting and to, go against adversity. But I think that Saturn in the 4th house is going to really change the pace, and it's going to teach you to be, a little bit more present, a little bit more confrontation, especially if you blank out in anger, or if you blank out in frustration, or if you use these emotions to, move forward, So it's like restricting what you are familiar with, restricting, like if you're always used to moving forward and doing things and getting things done in one fell swoop, Saturn will restrict that, and it might be kind of like, okay, like let me, take care of it, let me do this over again, And Saturn will oppose your 10th house. So maybe this could be something going on with like bosses, or maybe it could be like your personal life is starting to affect your career, your work, and your reputation, especially if you have like family members that are talking about you, or if you have family members that you're going back and forth with, or if there's just like a lot of business that you're having to get rid of in order to tend to something about your personal life, So it's like this aspect of your life might become very, very important in the next few years, and it might start clashing with your family and stuff like that. But I also think that because Saturn rules, like, or the 4th house is about the past, a lot of you could be like doing a blast from the past. So a lot of you could be meeting people who you haven't seen in a very long time, or a lot of you could be having a lot of like transformations and realizing that people are no longer what they seem, in the past, especially. And I'm saying this because Jupiter will be in your 8th house and will trine Saturn in your 4th house. And especially with Neptune in your 4th house, a lot of you might be like deluding yourself, or, seeing things a little bit with like rose-colored glasses when it comes to your family, your home, your upbringing, your childhood. And it just might be like, you have an epiphany, or you have a realization that things are not the way that they seem, and you know the grass is really not as green as you thought it would be. And with Jupiter, you know, ruling your 12th house, moving in your 8th house and trining, you know, it's kind of like, I got to get out of here, you know, like going somewhere that you've never been before. You're like, girl, like, let me move to China, let me move to Bangladesh, let me move to Brazil or something, you know, let me go somewhere I've never been before, travel, you know, leave this place so that I can be somewhere, you know. But I would advise you to be careful, because Neptune can, on one hand, you know, incentivize you to be more creative and do things differently, but it can also sometimes be very diluting. And so you might feel like, oh, if I just run away from it, then you know nothing will happen and everything will be okay. But that's really not the case. I think that this transit will force you to, like, okay, like instead of moving on to the next thing and you know starting new projects and working ahead and you know aggressively putting energy forward, you have to sit with what you're feeling, you have to sit with what's going on in your life, and you have to tend to yourself a little bit more, you know. Especially because like Aries is the self, and then you know Saturn is the body, so your body, because it rules your first house. And you know Saturn deals with the bones, it deals with the joints, it deals with teeth, it deals with like your skin, your hair, your nails and stuff like that, you know, at least like the function of them and how your body produces these things, you know. So these might be parts of your body where you're having to get a little bit more serious. And I also think that because Mars will retrograde in Virgo, a lot of you, you know, like Virgo is about service, it's about health and work. So a lot of you might be getting the treatment where you're having to go back and forth, especially with like an older family member, because Saturn can represent like an older member. Maybe you're having to take care of an older family member, or maybe you're having to provide services for them, or maybe you're getting services from an older family member, some sort of guidance or wisdom from them. Or a lot of you might be seeing something very differently when it comes to, and it, excuse me, it might be like in-laws or like family members who aren't like blood. So it might be like people who have married in or something like that. Excuse me, oh my gosh. Anyways, I also want to say Saturn in the 4th house is just one of those things where a lot of you might move a lot, you know, like let's just be real. Aside from all that, and with Saturn, you know, the Mars retrograde in Virgo, it might be like moving somewhere you've never been before. So it's like, get ready for like a lot of changes in your home. So it's like grandma or grandpa moving in for a little bit, get ready to, you know, have to travel back home, not see your family for whatever reason, being more independent, leaving the house, flying the nest, you know. And because Saturn is a little bit more long distance, but Neptune's involved too. With Neptune involved, when you're moving somewhere and you're investing in property, the first thing you should check is the bathroom. Check the bathrooms, check the plumbing, check like infrastructure, check for water damage, all that stuff. Take it from me, okay? Neptune in my 4th house. I don't like the bath. This house or this apartment, I do not like the tub. The sink's weird. There's no faucet aerator. I am just too lazy to go get it. I'm too scared to fix it. I'm not doing it. It's gonna break, and I'm not hiring no plumber to do that, okay? That's all I'm saying. But anyhow, I'm very serious about that. So a lot of you could also be moving next to a body of water, or a lot of you could be moving near the beach or somewhere like off the coast in some ways. Some of y'all might go off the grid low key. Like Neptune just don't be playing like that. Like y'all might just like, next time I hear from y'all Cap Risings, y'all might be like, oh yeah, I moved to Central America, or I moved to Chile, or I moved to like Japan, or I moved to these islands off the coast of Asia, you know, I'm just living life now, you know, no internet or anything like that. You know, it's like a lot of y'all could be dealing with something like that. You know, some of y'all might be going to Hawaii. But, you know, I also think that this could be something about vacations and being somewhere else and, you know, just trying new things and new experiences. But I will say that Mars retrograde in your 9th house, there will be a huge test for your beliefs and a huge test for your ideals and your philosophies and how you live your life. Especially if you live your life by certain philosophies and beliefs, especially if they were taught to you by family. So like, you know, Saturn does restrict. So maybe if you're dealing with like an overly religious family member, or if there has been like a major theme of religion, or like maybe even like substance abuse, or, you know, just like, you know, these unhealthy things that, you know, entail escapism or emotional confusion, these themes might be very relevant in the first chunk of this transit, where you might kind of feel like very repressed, you know, like, oh, like I can't you know, these things might be manifesting now. Like, even if you moved out of it, you know, even if you left the coop already, it could be like, oh, like I'm not allowed to get tattoos and piercings because of my parents, you know, like, oh, they believe that I should be celibate until I get married or something like that, you know, or like I'm never gonna get into a relationship, but, you know, wait till marriage and whatnot because of my parents' religious beliefs or something like that, especially like older things, like, you know, Saturn's older things, and like there could be a lot of history and also conflicts coming up because Aries deals with conflict. Hold on, I need some water. My throat's messing up. Okay, that helped. But these things could definitely be relevant as well. And I think that Aries, it will cause you to be more independent from those things. You know, like, I want to believe things for myself. I want to do things on my own. I want to live my life by my own standards and my own beliefs. I don't have to follow your values. I don't have to believe in your perspectives. I'll do what I want to do. I also think that a lot of you could be investing in property around this time because like the ninth house makes me think of like property and like the legal stuff that goes into it. And the fourth house, you know, is like your home, your property. So, and especially with Jupiter moving into your eighth house, there could be talks of like inheritance this year or like in the next 2 years. And maybe there will be something coming in for you that's like really nice, you know, like a big sum of money, but it might come at like the expense of another person. So like I low-key think like maybe Saturn in your fourth house will be like, oh, a family gets put on disability or a family is in the hospital now, but now y'all are receiving like money or something, and maybe there's like a family who's been military or like something like that, and this is like you receiving pension or this is you receiving some sort of financial benefit, but it will be seemingly at the cost of something else. You know, there will be like a major take but also a major give in these next 2 years, and it will be very extreme, and it will open up your eyes to seeing the dynamics of your life and how you should be living, and it will really urge you to live a little bit more carefully or a little bit more recklessly based on where you are on the spectrum. That was a really good way to put it. I like that. For you, we have the Eight of Swords. I definitely feel like this is a really important card, or I feel like it's very relevant because I think that Saturn in the fourth house, it makes you believe like, no, I can't go against what mom says. I can't go against what my grandma says. I can't go against what, you know, my family says to me, or I can't go against what I know and what I'm familiar with. And, you know, like this hood is purposely draped over the eyes. So it might be that a lot of you are feeling like you are in denial, or you might kind of just feel like there's something that you refuse to accept about your childhood or something about something what has happened in your life. And I think that might cause you a lot of like overthinking, and this transit for you might just be like a really big, like, you know, eyes being open kind of moment where maybe people or situations that you thought were nursing you, taking care of you and protecting you and keep giving you home and solace and refuge and sanctuary, they're not actually bringing you that. They're actually keeping you hostage. They're actually keeping you unsafe. They're actually keeping you harmed. So I think that this is an opportunity where a lot of you will have to see something for what it is, and you'll have to use your mind and expand it in order to get yourself out of a situation so that you can bring in real comfort, a real home, and realize where you actually feel safe being yourself and doing what you want to do and living your life by the standards that you believe in yourself deep down. Anyways, that's all I have for you, Capricorn. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the horoscope resonated, and if it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye. I love you. Okay, so now we're at Aquarius. So hello, Aquarius rising. If you are seeing this, this will be your horoscope for Saturn and Aries, and I think you're gonna like this transit. Saturn will be in Aries until from February 2026, February 14th, so literally like tomorrow, until April of 2028. Around that threshold, like spring of 2028 is when it'll start ping-ponging back and forth, like, you know, like Taurus and Aries. Anyways, so for you, Saturn will be moving through your third house. And I remember when Saturn went through my third house, it's a lot of business and work with like your siblings and with your immediate relatives. But you know what's so literal? Third house is about like vehicles and cars and like, you know, technology. And I bought a TV and a car, and I got my car under Saturn in my third house. So take that for what it's worth, because I think that a lot of Aquarius risings have been dealing with a lot of stuff when it comes to transportation and communication and also immediate relatives. And, you know, Aries can be very selfish. It can be very aggressive, but the third house and Aries is like younger, so like a lot of you could be dealing with like younger relatives, so like maybe like nieces and nephews, but that's more like children. But I think that will still be relevant in some way, shape, or form. So it could be like relatives that have children. But anyways, I definitely think that Saturn in the third house will be a new adventure for you in technology as well, because third house can deal with things like that. Third house is just like a bunch of random stuff. So there's really no telling what this transit will bring you, but I can definitely guarantee that you'll come out of it feeling a lot more competent. You'll probably learn something new. Funny enough, I think Saturn in Aquarius is when I started learning tarot. So a lot of you could be doing something like that where you're learning some like a new skill and something that you do with your hands. And Aries makes me think of like exercise. It makes me think of workouts. It makes me think of movement. It makes me think of like starting something first. And the third house makes me think of like things you can do with your hands. So these things might be very relevant. So you might be doing like weightlifting, or a lot of you could just be lifting more heavy stuff and, you know, getting more hands on when it comes to your approach. And especially because in the beginning of next year, in January 2027, we're going to see a Mars retrograde, and Mars will station, or it will be in shadow in the second half of 2026. So you'll start to feel the effects by that point, like in the fall. And then you'll start to see a full blown in January when it actually stations retrograde. And Virgo is your 8th house. And I definitely think that maybe a lot of you will learn some form of like divination over the next few years, or maybe some of you get a little bit more serious about like communication, psychology, or, you know, reading people, and maybe even becoming a little bit more financially literate in some way. So a lot of you could be learning how to do like taxes, insurance, or, you know, signing big things and, you know, like loans and stuff. But I also think that it will be like, especially like a lot of you could buy a car under this transit, you know, a lot of you could buy a lot of big new things, like maybe like a new AC system, maybe a new, you know, like technology thing, like a TV, or like phones, laptops, and stuff like that. So a lot of you could be investing in that. Or maybe if, especially if you own like a business, or if you know, work somewhere, like maybe this is you like investing a lot of money in a new system or a new, you know, internet or interface. And I think that a lot of you may also dabble into things like cybersecurity or like crypto and digital currency. So that might be relevant for some of you. But on the other hand, I also think that there's like a very psychological air in the next 3 or so years. A lot of you might be getting into like using work like yoga and stuff, like hot yoga, as a means to do therapy and transformation. So I think that a lot of you on a more literal level may get more comfortable with your body, especially because in traditional astrology, you know, Saturn rules your body, your first house. So I think that definitely a lot of you could be using like movement of the body and what you put in the body as a way to cleanse yourself and as a means to work and to incorporate new things into your life. And when I say that, I just say it because Mars likes to detox. It likes to get rid of things. It likes to clean things up and cause conflict. And Virgo is about service. It's about health. It's about wellness and our diet. So a lot of you could be doing detoxes in the next few years. Maybe some of you are planning on losing a lot of weight. Maybe some of you are trying to gain weight. Maybe some of you are trying to restrict your diet. Or maybe some of you are realizing like deeper emotions and how they manifest in things with like your words, your technology, your food, and like how you consume things. So like all of these things could be very relevant. And especially with Saturn moving out of your second house, your relationship with material things and, you know, your self-worth is very realized by this point. And I think that Saturn moving into your third house with that Mars retrograde in your 8th house, it will be a time where you're integrating movement and using your body as a means to feel whole and to feel complete and, you know, develop a deeper, more intimate connection with yourself or another person. Especially because in the second half of this 2026 and the beginning of 2027, Jupiter will also be in Leo, and this is your 7th house. So, you know, and Jupiter rules your second house as well as your 11th house. So a lot of you could be getting in groups of people, or a lot of you could be joining like yoga groups, Pilates groups, maybe even like with Neptune in the mix, maybe like a synchronized swimming group or like a swim group or something like that, or just something more like with like water and whatnot. So I'd also be careful with like water stuff, like not to be like cliche about it, but make sure if you're buying like a car, a new apartment, or anything like that, check for like radiators, check for water damage, check for, you know, if there's fluid issues, if there's something leaking, or if there's just like anything of like liquids and stuff like that and how those cause issues. So definitely take care of that, Aquarius. Just a little tip for you. But I also want to say that there could be a lot of deception with this kind of transit. I would say that if you're trying to meet people, try to meet people in person. Like Neptune in the third house definitely can call for a lot of lack of boundaries and confusion with like social media. And because Saturn's opposing your ninth house, maybe there will be like some sort of clash of like beliefs and values, or there could be like a lot of struggles of language. So maybe some of you are dealing with like language barriers in these next few years and you're having to learn a new language. And it could be in compensation to like the things that I was talking about earlier. So it's like language of your body, maybe you're moving to foreign lands, or maybe there's like just things you're having to learn and like consume a bunch of information at one time. Aside from that, the third house can also be about siblings and immediate relatives, like I've been saying. And because Saturn is like older relatives, it could be like older siblings as well. I was saying Aries could be like younger siblings, but I also think that maybe it could be like older siblings or older relatives with like nieces and nephews, and that could be somehow like relevant to you. But definitely, I think that there will be some sort of like issues that go down of like your siblings and whatnot. Especially because Saturn also rules your 12th house, so it kind of gives me the vibe like wanting to be alone a little bit more. So a lot of you might like want more independence, or maybe some of you are wanting to move somewhere that you've never been before. That could be relevant for some of you. Or maybe it could be like you're trying to look for somewhere to be, or maybe you're trying to learn new things, like Saturn ruling your 12th house, opposing your 9th house, and in your 3rd house kind of seems like, oh, like doing research and gaining knowledge. So I don't think that in the next 3 years a lot of you will just like suddenly move. I think that when Saturn moves into Taurus, your 4th house, that will be when you actually decide to change something about your living situation. But for right now, it could be that you are like traveling, or you're having to go somewhere far away. And then when Saturn moves into your 4th house, it will get serious about like, okay, where do I want to live? Where do I want to be? And so like, where do I need to go? And with Neptune in the mix too, this is kind of like exemplified. So it's like a lot of confusion there. I also think that Neptune in third will make you very intuitive. So I think that this kind of further fuels what I was saying in the beginning, where a lot of you could be developing more downloads, having interesting dreams, or just dealing with even more confusion when it comes to your relationships and how you communicate with them. Like I said, it could be learning something new in terms of like language and whatnot. I also want to say that I've had Mars retrograde in my 8th house before, and I really want you to be prepared for it, because the 8th house can also deal with your hormones. It can deal with like autoimmune stuff and like your reproductive organs. So this might be part of your body where like your diet and your routine is really affecting it. So definitely take care, Aquarius. So I would just say like be careful, and like just be fine, and make sure you're paying attention to what you're eating and what you're drinking, and I think that maybe in the next year you'll realize that something that you've been consuming or something that you've been doing is maybe like poisoning you or not doing you any good, and you will get rid of it. I also think that Mars retrograding the 8th house, when Mars retrograded through my 8th house, I felt broke, okay? And it was really annoying. But it was in Cancer, so it was like a little bit different. But for you, it's in Virgo. So it's like a lot of you might be getting very hyper vigilant when it comes to like organization. And a lot of you might be projecting like a sense of like transformation, or like, emotionality or insignificance by trying to criticize others, through words, through language, through what they're doing. And a lot of you might be verbalizing insecurities over these next few years. So it's like really important to understand, like, are you looking for a fight, or are you looking for conflict because you feel insignificant or you feel useless, and you want to feel like, like you're rooted in conflict, or rooted in like, oh, like, and I think that especially if you're like learning psychology or trying to like delve into the human mind in some way, shape, or form, I think that these next few years will be really nice for you to realize and apply knowledge that you have gained to yourself, to your body, to who you are and your personality. And I think that it will be very healthy for you, and it will be a huge opportunity for you to make meaningful progress in your life, as opposed to constantly trying to manage the people around you. And with Jupiter in the 7th house, you might be attracting people from different backgrounds, different cultures, people who you've never met before, especially if you are like traveling. And this doesn't even have to be like romantic. This could be like friendships and social circles. So, and I think that a lot of you may develop new ideals and dreams when it comes to like marriage and meeting the right person, or being around the right people and finding your tribe, finding your person, and something like that as well. But yeah, let me start shuffling these cards. I think that Saturn in the 3rd house is like a bit of a wild card, like I said, in my eyes. There's really no telling. It could be that you have to move across the country, you get a new car, or, you have to have conversations with certain family members whom you haven't spoken to in a really long time. But it could also be that a lot of you are dealing with restrictions when it comes to articulating yourself and learning language. So it might be that a lot of you are having to adjust in some way. cards fell out. For you, we have the Hermit. I definitely feel like this is important. It kind of gives me the vibe of somebody, you know, like opposing the 9th house, you know, your 12th house ruler, being alone, deciding to set away from everybody, monk vibes, teaching others, helping others, or deciding to pull away in order to do some soul searching and, you know, being in places that you've never been or doing what it is that you want to do. The Hermit to me is like a very lonely card, or it's a card of, you know, like, it literally just makes me think of like being somewhere you've never been before and nobody knows you. You have no identity. You have completely left yourself behind and you have thrown everything away. Not necessarily in a bad way, but more so in a way that's like it's a new beginning. It's a new start. And I think that there is definitely an energy of just being in hermit mode these next few years and wanting to, you know, isolate yourself and to put yourself in new situations so that you can grow and look at yourself from a different perspective and to just expand in a new way. But overall, maybe at times you'll feel a little bit lonely, or maybe sometimes you'll feel a little bit isolated, but I also think that this will make way for a lot of like introspection, especially if you feel like there's a lot of other people around you and it's causing like suffocation in your life in some way, shape, or form. Anyways, that's all I have for you, Aquarius. Thank you so much for watching. I hope the horoscope resonated, and if it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye. I love you. All right, last but not least, we've got Pisces. So hello, Pisces rising. If you're seeing this, this will be a horoscope for Saturn in Aries. Saturn will be in Aries from February 14, 2026 up until April of 2028. Around spring of April or like spring of 2028 is when Saturn will be moving in and out, like Aries and Taurus and whatnot. But Pisces, I know you're excited. Oh my gosh, Saturn in Pisces was worse than I thought it would be for literally all the mutable signs. You know, like, can we just get a round of applause for y'all? You know, especially if that was your Saturn return, that was just not a vibe. I want to say more graphic words to describe it, but I don't know if YouTube will like that. So just pretend I said a whole flurry of just very inappropriate curse words describing the situation. Or if you'd like, feel free to say them in the comments, but please use them conservatively. We don't want to be too vulgar around here. Anyways, Saturn will be moving into your 2nd house. So it definitely, you know, like, let's be real, it's very financially themed, a lot of money stuff. And, you know, the 2nd house is about your values, your self-worth, and Aries is about the self. So I definitely think that this will be, you know, like, in some way, shape, or form impacting how you interact with others and how you view yourself and how good enough you feel for different things in your life. And when I'm being kind of vague, because it doesn't matter what it's being applied to, the common denominator is you and your self-worth. And Saturn rules your, hold on, I'm thinking. It rules your 11th house. So, and Saturn ruling your, or like opposing your 8th house from the 2nd house, it makes me think that a lot of you are going through something with like intimacy with your social circles, with your friends, and feeling good enough to be around the right people to help you or for certain opportunities. I definitely think the 11th house ruler going into the 2nd house will create chances, or it will create, you know, pathways and doors opening. But because Saturn is a restrictive planet, or it is a planet that requires action, I definitely get the sense that for you, this transit will be one of those things where it's like, if you want it, you can go get it. Do you see what I mean? So I think that this will be like a huge thing that's kind of going on where it's like, oh, you know, like, I want to make more money, but I need to just like, you know, go for my dreams. So something like that could definitely be the case. But I think that because Saturn, you know, just moved through your 1st house, it's like you're a lot more serious about your future now and you have a clear grasp of where you are in your timeline. So I think that this is a great opportunity for you to get a little bit more serious about incorporating what you have learned throughout these past few years, to integrate them into your sense of self-worth and your values and what you feel like is important as it relates to yourself, as it relates to your identity and your core beliefs. And we will have a Mars retrograde in the next year. It will be in January of next year, 2027, but you'll start to feel the effects of it in the 2nd half of this year because Mars will be in shadow by this point. and it will retrograde in your 7th house of relationships. And I definitely think that a lot of you could be running into people from the past. You could be running into connections whom you haven't seen in a very long time, or it could be that something that you have been through before is going to be manifesting in a interpersonal connection. And so I would just like really take care, because Saturn technically also has ties with your 12th house. So, your undoing, how do you emotionally spend your money? Are you being aggressive with your money? Are you using money as a means to crush your self-worth, your identity? Or do you believe that if you have certain things, or if you achieve certain things, then you'll be good enough and then you'll have what it is that you want? It really comes down to your own self-perception. The 2nd house, it's about believing that you can get through certain things. So I definitely think that the experiences that you go through with Saturn in your 2nd house will be very raw and very visceral, and you'll probably be put in situations where you really have to problem solve and get it together. And I'm not saying that you don't have it together or anything like that. I just think that whatever you saw in Saturn in Pisces, you'll kind of see it kind of come up again next year, because Saturn has been opposing your 7th house of relationships. So your connections, the people that you are around, and your personal relationships and even business partnerships have all in some way, shape, or form restricted you, made you feel tied down, or been a huge incentive for you to grow and change or make some realizations about yourself. Especially, Pisces, when it comes to your faith, your beliefs, and your emotionality, emotional boundaries, and maybe even if you struggle with escapism and substances. So like all these things are kind of playing, and I think that because Mars will actually retrograde in your 7th house, it will start to change the environment of the people that you're with. And your self-worth and how you feel about yourself and what you believe yourself to be will be directly reflected in your relationships. So I think that over the next 2 years or so, a lot of you will start to come into these realizations of like, what do I deserve in a partner? What do I deserve in the people around me? What is myself? Like, who am I when it comes to my relationships? Am I a servant? Am I just always doing things for other people? Am I always taking care of them? What can they do for me? What is the value of a relationship? What is the value of certain people being in my life, And obviously, I'm not saying that all Pisces placements are obsessed with being in a relationship, or like that is the ultimate goal for you. But let's be real, I think that has been a very important facet for the past 2-3 years when it comes to your interpersonal connections. And I think that this year will also reinforce that. But instead of the work being done on you and how you feel about yourself and restricting you, it will be more so about the people that you're around and the effort that you put into certain connections and whatnot. And Mars ruling your 2nd house and in retrograde in your 7th house, a lot of you may run into generosity or money coming from relationships or people, or even like legal matters. I also want to say that in the 2nd half of 2026, you're going to see Jupiter move into your 6th house. So I definitely think that there will be something going on here in the next year or so when it comes to like your health, your well-being. As Jupiter finishes up in your 5th house, there's probably like an emphasis on children at the moment, or something about like nieces, nephews, kids, your inner child, fun, healing that part of yourself, letting go of certain things, your self-expression, especially when it comes to like your home, your sense of comfort and where you feel secure, and finding security in your hobbies and what you love. And then when it moves into your 6th house, getting very serious about your day-to-day life, incorporating more faith, more belief, and more magic. And Leo is also about fun and playtime and taking risks. So a lot of you could be learning to take risks in your day-to-day routine, and maybe, like shooting your shot when it comes to like a job or work situation. So I definitely think that in the next year, a lot of Pisces placements will start biting off more than they can chew and starting to, take on more in order to bring more wellness to them, especially because Jupiter does have ties with your 1st house of your body. So I think that a lot of you over the course of the next year will be doing more practices in order to invite more wellness and more health into your physical body. And then, that will all play into your sense of self-worth, And Mars and Virgo, Mars likes to detox, and Virgo is about health and wellness and service. So, your 2nd house ruler doing something like that, it kind of makes me like your 2nd house ruler retrograding in Virgo in the 7th house makes me think of looking for people who want to be of service to you, people who want to nurture you, people who want to take care of you, or people who appreciate you and can offer you something, or something of that nature. Connections and people and routines and health and jobs that are more congruent to your self-worth and who you are. And especially with Neptune, your other chart ruler, being, tangled up in this, a lot of you could be feeling like very delusional or like real unrealistic, like, oh, I want the best of the best, I want this and that, I want shiny cars and like a big extravagant life or something like that, and these are all great things, and if you believe that you're worthy of it, that is the truth, that is your reality. But I think that over the course of the next few years, you'll start to realize that what you want and what is actually important to you is a little bit more simpler and a little bit more stripped back and a little bit more even earthy and more realistic and pragmatic and more conducive to a quiet day-to-day life. So I think that a lot of Pisces placements will start to become a little bit more mundane throughout this transit and a little bit less extreme. So I think that a lot of you, and especially because, Aries is like a very youthful sign, a lot of you could be, like aging backwards, or a lot of you could be, hanging out around people who will allow you to express yourself more freely. But I think that I say that because Saturn governs your 11th house. So I just think that friendships and social circles will be a big theme in the next few years when it comes to your sense of control and it comes to your values, So I think that you'll look for people who share your values a little bit more, or you may be using your values and what is important to you in order to search for the right people. But be careful of friends that are also restricting your values, restricting your money, and restricting, what you feel is important. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of you go through some falling outages in the next few years. And be careful of friends who borrow from you, or be careful of friends who like take from you, because Saturn is, like I said, opposing your 8th house. So like be careful of people who are leeching off of your finances, people who don't pay you back, people who, always take from you but never add anything to your life. Being more intimate with people and being more soft, like your 8th house is ruled by Libra. So like romance, so like gestures, little favors, flowers, lighting the mood, little gifts and stuff like that. I think that a lot of you will want to integrate that more as a way to, feel intimacy and feel closer to people around you over these next few years. And maybe even being a little bit more flirtatious, a little bit more fun, and if that's not your style, like, being more direct, something about that. Saturn in Aries just makes me think of being a little bit more decisive. And I think that it will be reflected in your money and what you are deciding to invest in. When it comes to like 11th house theme, so like the goals, the future, your friends, and the people that you are around. And I think that a lot of you could also be like, it kind of makes me think of like reading books on business, or like reading, like starting your own business, or like looking for people who have something that you want in order to incorporate that into your personal life in some way, shape, or form. And I definitely think that when Mars actually does do its business in your 7th house, this will be reflective of you shaking hands with people and finding the right people who can help you. Maybe some of you even look for like a mentor, or will look for somebody who you can like intern or like work under in some way, shape, or form these next few years, especially if you are trying to get your career off the ground, since Jupiter does rule your 10th house and Jupiter will be in your 6th house. So it's like getting more serious about your career, putting the little efforts forward in order to make something nice happen. Especially if you're planning to like work with kids in some way or do something a little bit more creative. I kind of just want to take the card right on top. Oh, we have the 2 of Cups. I definitely think that relationships and connections with people will be a lot more honest. And I want to say that in this particular 2 of Cups, they are both men. And, like maybe some of you are having some like deep friendships or deep connections with people who are the same gender as you. Not like in like a homosexual way. Maybe for some of you it could be that, but like it's that sense of like reconnecting with a part of yourself and with your core values through other people and through, certain situations. But overall, the 2 of Cups to me is about relationship and connection. So it can be soulmates. A lot of you could be meeting someone very, very important these next few years, but it could also just be that you are developing a better relationship with yourself and your body and who you are, and getting to know yourself a little bit more. And maybe the Mars retrograde will be you walking away from or distancing yourself from certain people in order to develop a more whole relationship with who you are and what you are. But I also just think that this is just about like living your truth more honestly and earnestly, and you're no longer afraid to do that, you know, based on the people around you. You know, like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. I don't care what my partner, what my parents, or whoever else is around me will say to me. I'm gonna do what I want to do. Anyways, that's all I have for you, Pisces. Thank you so much for watching. Congratulations. I hope the horoscope resonated, and if it did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye. I love you.